The protagonist thought that dying at 23 was too young. Death, to her, was just a release. She had been hospitalized for 5 years due to a rare disease. Her senses began to fade one by one, starting with her sight. Losing her vision was the hardest blow, as she could no longer experience the ending of her favorite novel. She didn't understand why she had to endure all this pain if she was destined to die anyway. After death, the protagonist opened her eyes again, finding herself in the body of the villainess from the novel she was reading before she went blind. Opening her eyes, she noticed the fragrant scent of the blanket. She wondered why it smelled so good, since the nurses never brought air fresheners. Suddenly, she bolted upright, realizing she had regained her sense of smell. She shook her head in disbelief, unable to comprehend that she could actually smell something, as it had been impossible before. She realized it was the scent of roses. Trying to figure out what was happening, the girl looked up and was surprised to find herself in an unfamiliar room. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door, and a voice called her Ariel, asking if she was awake. A maid entered with a tray, wishing her good morning. The girl was startled. The maid simply smiled innocently and asked what scented bath oil she would like today. Her flushed cheeks couldn't comprehend why someone would be dressed like this in a hospital. Then she wondered what Miss Ariel meant. Our protagonist caught sight of something strange on the tray, like jelly with a rose inside. She stared at the object, realizing it was the first time she had seen anything like it. As she touched this new item, the young lady was stunned, feeling as if she were in a garden. She couldn't remember ever experiencing such a wonderful fragrance, while the maid looked at her strangely. The maid inquired if something was troubling Miss, as she seemed strange. She said she was just enjoying the fragrance. This politeness completely surprised the servant, making her wonder if she had done something wrong. She knelt at Ariel's feet and began to apologize, thinking the politeness was sarcasm, implying she had messed up. Ariel tried to reassure the girl, saying she wasn't angry. Suddenly, the girl's gaze fell upon the tray, seeing her reflection, but not recognizing her own face. The maid looked at the young lady awkwardly, not daring to say much. Ariel couldn't believe she looked completely different, not understanding why she had become another person. She was so shocked that she said she needed a mirror. Looking at herself in the mirror, she saw pink curls, eyes that shone like the morning sky, and snow-white skin. She immediately realized she had seen this face before. She realized she had seen this face on the cover of her favorite novel and couldn't possibly mistake it. The shocked young lady asked the maid again what she had called her, and the maid replied that her name was Ariel. Her gaze dropped, and the girl felt fear, asking the name of the female protagonist. A nervous laugh escaped her lips. Ariel burst into nervous, slightly crazed laughter, startling the maid standing beside her. She remembered that this was the name of the villain. In that novel, Ariel realized she was doomed, as the character was executed early in the story, specifically by public hanging. All she knew was that Ariel was a genius perfumer. The reason was the scent of a demonic flower called Onyxia, which the protagonist needed. In the story, Cedric Evans asked Ariel to make a perfume with that specific scent, and as a genius, she succeeded, creating a unique fragrance. Of course, nothing is free, so Ariel asked Cedric to go out with her in exchange. He had no choice, but she wanted a serious relationship. Unfortunately, he pushed her away and started dating someone else afterward. Ariel's obsession grew stronger, and she tried to kill the female protagonist with the perfume and the poison within it. However, she was caught and publicly hanged for attempted murder. Looking at herself in the mirror, she knew a terrible fate awaited her. The maids were dressing Ariel's hair, and she felt scared remembering the novel's contents. The girl realized she had been given a second chance at life and couldn't just die foolishly. She started thinking about what she needed to do first. To avoid death, she was supposed to meet Cedric that day. When he called her, she responded with her name, smiling. The young lady immediately announced it was time to end their relationship. She felt she had to dump him first. To avoid a deadly future, Ariel stood up from the table, stating she no longer had feelings for him and that it was time to end things. The man tried to stop her, saying she shouldn't rush off, that he had something to tell her, something to show her. She smiled, explaining that the perfume would be delivered by messenger, eliminating the need for further meetings or conversations. With a playful grin, she added that her departure which she had no regrets about, wouldn't turn him into a mad dog. The man looked at her, asking her to repeat her last words. The nickname, it turned out, originated from a novel she was reading. She immediately apologized. Having said everything she wanted to say, she left the restaurant. After meeting Cedric, Ariel understood why the character was so obsessed with him. He was indeed handsome, but dying for him seemed utterly foolish. She was certain that once they parted ways, their paths would never cross again. This meant she no longer had a reason to die. Ariel could start anew, embracing the second life she'd been given. She rushed out of the restaurant, exclaiming that she was finally free. Arriving at the palace, the young lady saw a tall man in a dark suit with an elegant tie. Everyone began to bow, not daring to look up at him. It turned out that the displeased-looking man was Ariel's father. He asked her if she had met with Mr. Cedric again. Suddenly, the man began yelling about how she had tarnished the family's honor, while everyone around them gossiped. He then bluntly stated that no matter how hard she tried, Lord Evans would never give her a second glance. Ariel immediately announced that she and Cedric had broken up. She said there was no need to worry, as they had completely ended their relationship. Everyone, including the servants, was shocked by Ariel's loud declaration. But instead of supporting her, her father scoffed, saying Cedric had finally ended things. She tried to explain that it was a mutual breakup, but her father retorted that he would never believe her, especially since she seemed suspiciously calm. Ariel finally lost her patience and countered that she was the one who proposed the breakup. The man was stunned, demanding that she stop this charade, claiming it was just another ploy for attention. But when Ariel stated that she had lost feelings for Cedric, her father became completely enraged. He suggested checking her temperature, convinced she must be ill. Ariel pleaded with him to stop, saying she wasn't sick, just truly tired and wanting to go to her room. Ariel's father nearly fainted when he heard her speak to such a distinguished person in that tone. The young lady was indeed exhausted, but she still needed to visit the perfume workshop. She asked a maid to accompany her, but instructed her to leave once they arrived. The maid was shocked when her mistress told her to rest. The maid bowed and thanked the young lady. Entering the room, she saw a huge table and a shelf filled with new perfumes. The young lady began to examine the bottles, touching everything. Picking up one of them, she took a sniff and was immediately hit by a strong scent. It was a very sweet and rich aroma of blooming roses. While the scent was wonderful, it was too strong, causing Ariel to cough. Remembering her long-lost sense of smell from her past life, tears welled up in her eyes. She had dreamed of becoming a perfumer and had studied hard for this moment. Before she got sick, she had been studying chemistry. Suddenly, the young lady shook her head, realizing she didn't want to dwell on the past. Ariel began searching for something that should be somewhere in the room. Her gaze landed on a slightly open box of chocolates. Opening it fully, she smiled, realizing she had found what she was looking for. Ariel had found the book where she used to record her formulas. In the novel, when she opened this book, she discovered a very strange formula. She saw a perfume recipe used to kill the female lead. Ariel felt a sense of dread as she flipped to the next page, and suddenly her gaze fell upon the love potion she had once developed to make Cedric fall in love with her. Ariel continued to flip through the book, as this wasn't what she was looking for. Then she finally found what she needed, a perfume in a purple bottle. It was a perfume with the scent of the magic flower Onyxia, a legendary flower that occasionally appeared on the eastern continent because the gate to the demon world was closed. Even members of the royal family tried to obtain this flower due to its unique properties. But the issue was that this scent was the only thing that could calm Cedric down. When he tried to block out this scent, tragedy struck. The young lady concluded that this was terrible and must never happen again. Suddenly, Ariel was distracted by the news of a visitor from the Evans mansion. Ariel was quite surprised. A tall man with auburn hair and a charming smile appeared at the door. The young lady looked at him, thinking he must be his advisor. The gentleman apologized for the late visit. The lady smiled and said it was all right. Since he came, there must be a reason, and she was curious to know what it was. The gentleman handed the lady a small box, explaining that it was hers, left behind at the restaurant. Inside the box was a bouquet of blue roses, the one she used today. The advisor smiled and said his master requested to return it to Lady Ariel. Ariel was surprised, as Cedric usually wouldn't care if someone forgot such things. The lady smiled, lowering her head, and then thanked the advisor. The cheerful gentleman asked Ariel if she had heard the latest news. He said that next weekend there would be a festival in the Mechlin region the streets would be very crowded, so they should send a carriage to escort the lady. The young woman didn't understand why His Highness's people needed to escort her. Ariel realized Cedric's advisor didn't know they had broken up. The lady stated that she no longer needed to see him on the weekend. Ariel was annoyed that she had to repeat this over and over again. The gentleman asked Ariel if she had changed her mind. She declared that she had no plans to get married. Ariel requested that the calming perfume be delivered to the Duke's mansion. The advisor asked her to deliver it personally, but she replied that she had servants and there was no need to go herself. The advisor bowed and left the palace. The lady handed the box to the maid, telling her to throw it away. Meanwhile, at His Highness's mansion, the advisor announced his return and readiness to begin work. He raised his head when he heard that Ariel had no regrets about the breakup. He said that the lady wasn't exactly calm. On the contrary, she looked happy and had no regrets about what happened. Cedric sneered, realizing that the relationship was entirely on her terms and would end on her terms as well. The gentleman realized that Ariel was indeed strange. She neither complained about his being late nor gazed expectantly at anything. He understood that the girl had forcibly kept him by her side for a whole year. He thought there must be a good reason for the breakup. The advisor speculated that perhaps Cedric had offended Lady Ariel in some way. The only thing Cedric did today was be 10 minutes late. He asked if the breakup was good news for the gentleman. Hearing this, the gentleman angrily demanded he repeat the last sentence. He continued, saying that since the gentleman never had feelings for her, he only dated her because of the promised perfume. He couldn't understand what was wrong with Ariel, considering that previously, perfume was her main weapon to make the man she was so obsessed with fall in love with her. The advisor suggested again that the girl might have simply fallen out of love with him for no particular reason. Cedric retorted that she couldn't have stopped loving him because her insane obsession lasted for a year, and such feelings don't just disappear. He didn't know the reason for the breakup, but somehow things were turning in his favor. Cedric couldn't understand why Ariel dumping him made him so uneasy, especially since he never loved Ariel. The gentleman turned his head, complaining about a bad smell in the room. He sent the advisor to tell the servants to bring him some cold water. Ariel spent several days in the perfume workshop, studying notebooks and reading the formula she had written before her new body. As she read, the lady's memories, deeply buried due to her illness, gradually surfaced. The young woman mixed all the scents together, and finally, she created the perfume she had always longed to make. Ariel flipped through the notebook, checking all the ingredients she had written down. Her gaze landed on some unusual formulas, such as perfumes that could heal internal injuries and attract others. Knowing this, Ariel realized that she could become a true scent magician. She created a perfume that could eliminate fatigue with just one spray. The lady sprayed the perfume on herself, trying to figure out if it worked. Ariel didn't feel anything, but one of the maids asked to try it on herself. The lady smiled and agreed. Since the maid had been helping her, it wouldn't hurt to try the perfume they created together. After spraying the maid with the perfume, she inhaled the scent and closed her eyes, waiting for a miracle to happen. Suddenly, the girl started running around, saying she suddenly felt a surge of energy. Ariel was amazed by the immediate effect. The maid started mixing petals, trying to channel her newfound energy somewhere. The blonde girl shouted that she needed more work. It turned out they had run out of ingredients for making perfume. They decided to head to the Sanan district to buy everything they needed. Once there, the lady was amazed, as the area was truly beautiful and vibrant. The girls gathered a large number of flowers with a variety of scents. Suddenly, Ariel tripped, scattering the flowers she held all over the ground. At that moment, several noble women passed by, their expressions laced with disdain as they remarked that the flowers weren't nearly good enough. One of the noble women declared the flowers too shabby to catch Cedric's attention. They laughed, mentioning they'd heard Ariel had left their date because Cedric was such a busy man. Ariel smiled, realizing the noble women were deliberately trying to provoke her. She thanked them for their concern, and after gathering the scattered flowers, she said it didn't matter anymore because she and the Duke had broken up. The nouveau riche woman fanning herself was shocked by such a bold declaration. Everyone began to offer their insincere sympathies, saying it was cruel of Cedric to abandon her. They started to say that it's difficult for someone dumped after a long relationship to find someone new. Ariel laughed, saying such a statement was an insult to the Duke. She told them breaking up was a normal occurrence. and that after their separation, Cedric would surely meet someone who needed him. They were stunned to learn that Ariel had been the one to initiate the breakup. To prove her point, she asked the nouveau riche woman to introduce her to a young nobleman, saying she preferred someone kind and gentle to the cold duke. The woman thought Ariel was mocking her, as she didn't believe it was true. She said she would remember those words, and then left with her entourage. Ariel smiled, knowing she had nothing more to worry about. Meanwhile, the Duke received a package from Ariel. The Duke found that the girl had kept her promise and sent the requested perfume. His advisor requested to inspect the perfume, as the girl had previously sent various love potions. He refused his advisor's request and sprayed the perfume directly on himself, realizing Ariel was indeed quite talented. He wondered what formula she had used, as the previous perfumes had all failed. It turned out there was a hidden compartment in the box containing another set of perfume meant to alleviate fatigue. A note was also included describing the effects of these perfumes. He picked up the bottle, thinking it was another trick to make someone fall in love using perfume. The Duke decided to check if Ariel had added anything to the perfume. Unable to test it on himself, he sprayed the perfume on his advisor. The advisor felt as though he were lying in a sun-warmed meadow with a gentle breeze. He started running around, saying he needed to go to work because he was filled with energy and motivation. The Duke found this reaction amusing and decided to look at the note. Ariel had a little perfume left, and she wondered if it would be enough. Holding her notebook, she suddenly realized these pages were worth a fortune. The maids asked Miss Ariel to come downstairs to the dining table, as her father was waiting for her with important news. He then said the gentleman was waiting for her. The young lady walked towards the dining table, where the head of the family was waiting sternly. He looked at her with a severe gaze and ordered her to sit down. Wiping his face with a napkin, he announced that he had something to tell her. Her father said Ariel needed to get married. This shocked the girl greatly, especially since she had just broken up with Cedric. He explained that rumors of her breakup with the Duke had spread, and she had received a marriage proposal from the son of a currency importer family. Her father explained that she needed to marry him and bear a son for the family. Ariel was 23 years old and of marriageable age. Noble women were often forced into marriage for political reasons. Suddenly, the young lady felt a shiver run down her spine, as she had been given a second chance at life and didn't want to marry a stranger. While his daughter worried about her fate, her father thought the young man was quite handsome. In any case, the young lady was going to marry a handsome and tall man, but Ariel wanted something else. The girl tried to explain to her father that she wanted to enjoy some freedom. Her father asked what she wanted, and said he would fulfill any wish in order to salvage the family's reputation. He declared that if she gave an affirmative answer regarding the marriage proposal, he would grant her any wish. Ariel smiled and said she wanted a lot of money this month. Hearing this, her father frowned at her. He said he'd heard his daughter had taken up an old hobby again. To the man, the hobby of perfume making was too strange and foolish, and it couldn't possibly bring any benefit. He said he would give her 20,000 bezants if she just went on one date with the suitor. The girl smiled and agreed, and he didn't begrudge her the money. Her new fiancé was just a supporting character in the novel, the one who drugged and kidnapped the female lead. Seeing his smile and the dark circles under his eyes, Ariel wanted to run away. Realizing this suitor was a psychopath and definitely high on something, she asked about the strange smell coming from him. He asked what was wrong, and she replied that the smell was strange. The fiancé claimed he also smelled something odd and suggested they tell the manager. Ariel started rummaging through her bag for her new perfume. The man was surprised, saying he knew this young lady collected perfumes, which wasn't just practical, but also interesting. He tried to compliment her, but she sprayed the perfume directly in his face in response. Afterward, Ariel apologized, saying the smell was unbearable. The guy just stared blankly at one spot after smelling the fragrance. The young lady started waving her hand in front of his face, trying to bring him back to his senses. Suddenly, he broke into a wide smile, looked directly into her eyes, and excitedly asked what she had sprayed. The blonde man claimed the feeling was familiar, the same feeling he got after she sprayed the perfume. With a crazed smile, he blurted out that it was an aphrodisiac. The girl suddenly remembered that drug users are particularly sensitive to smells and perceive them differently. It seemed this new suitor wasn't as good as her father had said. Quite the opposite. The guy said he had never met such a daring woman, as others would have been scared away by such boldness. After that, the guy went crazy, claiming he wouldn't miss the hint like other guys. The girl was frightened, abruptly pulled her hand back, and screamed at him to let her go and not touch her again. It turned out this guy wasn't just crazy. He had completely lost his mind, rambling about how much he enjoyed the young lady's tricks. As Ariel turned away, she realized the smell might have been from drugs. The man not only looked, but also acted like a drug addict and a lunatic. Suddenly, the blonde man smiled again and, taking her hand, said that since they were on the same page, there was no need to wait. She was scared out of her wits and didn't want to go anywhere with this madman. She screamed for the waiter, hoping for help. The waiter was also shocked, and Ariel asked him to call security, as this young man was going too far. The girl was completely stunned when the guy started touching his chest with her hand. The madman declared his heart was beating for this young lady. The young lady decided she would adjust the formula when she got home. The blonde man told the waiter that the young lady was just shy and not to worry about her safety. Suddenly, Cedric himself appeared at the doorway. He looked at the couple with a fierce, hostile gaze, seeing the girl being mistreated. His eyes were filled with jealousy and rage, as no one had the right to touch his ex-girlfriend without her consent. He grabbed the jerk's arm and stared at him with a sharp gaze, asking what was going on. The man shrieked in fright, saying His Highness misunderstood, and started making excuses, saying he and Ariel were on a date. Ariel watched all of this, trying not to get too involved in the argument. The guy claimed the blonde man was crazy. He reached out, grabbed her hand, and led her away. Cedric asked what he could do to calm the young lady down. But the guy grabbed a dagger and asked if he could stab the madman in the same spot. The man knelt and begged for mercy. The guy started to say that Ariel was trying to get attention, causing embarrassment with her rejection, but his words were dismissed. The man kicked the rich kid hard in the chest, causing him to fall, and said the Marquis hadn't even taught him basic manners. Then he told the arriving guards to take the guy away. The man turned to Ariel and asked what she was doing here, and she replied that she wanted to ask him the same question. Cedric asked why the girl was with such a person. Ariel replied that her father had insisted she meet the Marquis' son. Ariel thought if she had known this meeting would turn out like this, she would never have come. The young lady smiled awkwardly and thanked the man. The man was shocked that she was already considering him as a potential husband, even though they had just broken up. Even though their relationship was based on a contract, it had lasted for more than 6 months. Cedric said there should be some standards in this kind of situation. He pointed out that she should consult with him first before getting into anything marriage-related. Ariel quickly claimed their relationship was a burden to him anyway. Hearing this, he just looked at her darkly, letting her know his feelings hadn't cooled and there were still sparks between them. Even if they were a couple for the public and popular because of their reputations, if she was with another man immediately after breaking up with Cedric, rumors would spread at the speed of light. The young lady understood this was unpleasant for him, and she had to abide by certain rules regardless. Ariel bowed her head and asked for forgiveness. Suddenly, he asked how long she planned to date him before moving on to the next man, especially since she had been so infatuated with him before. In truth, Ariel hadn't even considered the question. She didn't even know if she had a choice in the matter, knowing she couldn't become the Duchess Evans anytime soon. Unexpectedly, he was reluctant to let go, asking if she had changed her mind about the breakup. To this, she smiled and said she absolutely hadn't. He said if it was his lady's wish, he shouldn't object, then apologize for the questions. Cedric also mentioned her perfume was quite helpful, making his assistance more efficient. He had already left, and she regretted not asking about the effects of the Anesia perfume. It seemed it should be all right, as no news was good news. Upon returning to the castle, Ariel's father was furious after receiving a letter from the Marcus family. Ariel felt fear and shame before her father, worried about the letter's contents. Upon learning his daughter had sent her suitor to prison, he ripped the letter to shreds. Ariel said the fellow deserved it, and the guards had dealt with him. Her father asked what the two men had been dueling about in the restaurant. Ariel claimed Cedric hadn't done anything to be angry about. She simply said he had insulted her honor, saying Cedric accused her of using perfume to seduce him. Upon hearing this, he flew into a rage, realizing his daughter must be up to something. Ariel tried to explain she only used the perfume because of his unpleasant odor. The enraged man said she should give up this terrible hobby. Rumors of the incident were spreading like wildfire across the kingdom, causing him endless headaches. He said because of this, he feared no one would want to marry Ariel. He yelled for Ariel to immediately go to the security department to apologize and beg for Rob's release. Ariel stated that even if she wanted to, she couldn't do as her father asked. The reason being that Cedric had personally ordered his arrest, and it would be rude for her to interfere. Her father realized if the Duke was involved, there was nothing he could do. He declared he must find a suitable match for his daughter before the rumors spread further, so no one would dare tarnish their family's honor and reputation. The young lady couldn't understand how her father could come up with such a preposterous idea. Fortunately, her father still had another letter from Olga. First, the young lady wanted to know the new suitor's age, as it was important now. She was utterly shocked to learn he was already 40. He decided to find a husband for his daughter for the sake of profit. The young lady sighed and asked if she really needed to marry a rich man. He said yes, explaining he had invested in raising her for this very purpose. At that moment, Ariel realized she was merely a bargaining chip for this man, a chip that could bring more wealth and benefits to the family. Ariel picked up the letter and apologized for currently only considering handsome men of her own age. She declared that if she couldn't marry into wealth, she would personally compensate for the losses. He scoffed and asked if she was going to compensate him herself. He doubted what she could do, as spending money was her only skill. He was right. Ariel didn't know swordsmanship, nor how to control magic, but she did have one talent: her perfumery. The Earl might think it was child's play, but her perfumes were no joke. They were a powerful weapon. The young lady decided to buy the flower shop, but unfortunately, she was still 19.5 million short. Ariel was in a predicament, wondering how she could break free from her dependence on the family's income. Even selling all her clothes and jewelry wouldn't be enough, but she didn't want to set up a street stall. Her maid, seeing Ariel's perplexed expression, asked what was wrong. She began to describe the situation, hypothetically, as if someone desperately needed money. Ariel asked the girl for advice, as she really needed help now. The maid suggested she could borrow money, which made her start thinking about who could help her. The servant replied that she could ask the butler for help. Ariel tried to say it was an acquaintance who needed the money, but unfortunately, the maid realized she was talking about herself. Suddenly, a gray-haired stranger offered to share his thoughts on starting a business, suggesting Ariel find an investor. To avoid misunderstanding, the man said he knew who Ariel was. Ariel then realized that, as a skilled perfumer, she was quite well known. The maid wondered how he knew this. The man explained that he worked at the flower shop where Ariel frequently bought ingredients. The gray-haired man proudly stated that all the florists had heard of her, and other perfumers who came to buy flowers had also mentioned her talent. Ariel realized she could use her formulas to find investors. The sooner she found investors, the sooner she could start her business. She shook his hand in thanks. Ariel left with a satisfied smile, saying it seemed she had found a solution. The maid said it was indeed a good idea, running after her. It seemed Ariel knew where to find investors. The most popular balls, held in places where prestigious, resourceful, and fashionable nobles gathered, became the best option. Among the wealthy, some were prepared to invest in the perfume business. When she arrived, everyone looked at her strangely, as they had all heard the rumors. Ariel herself couldn't figure out what was wrong with the atmosphere, as the balls had always been enjoyable before. People said the lady was shameless, still carrying herself with an air of arrogance. They didn't like that she had angered the Duke, and worse, had poor Mr. Robb put in jail. Suddenly, a girl deliberately bumped into Ariel, claiming she hadn't seen her. She gave a nervous laugh and said it was all right, knowing full well the lady had done it on purpose. She didn't understand how Ariel's reputation had become like this, considering she had once been well respected among the locals. In this atmosphere, she didn't even have a chance to introduce herself. A stranger suddenly defended Ariel, saying it wasn't Ariel, but Mr. Cedric who had imprisoned Mr. Marcel. She declared that if the lady had any complaints, she should formally file a complaint with the Lord. Then she turned to the crowd. She told them to stop spreading baseless rumors. It turned out the girl was Charlotte Zenos, Marcel's only daughter, wielding all the power due to her lineage. The Marquis's daughter always had people surrounding her. Coupled with the girl's charm, it truly worked. As the queen of all banquets, she led the fashion trends. Ariel realized she should thank these people, as they had helped her approach Charlotte. A lady approached Ariel and asked if she was all right. Ariel felt this was a chance to build rapport and said the atmosphere was a little stuffy. The lady sniffed and asked if Lady Ariel had perhaps applied too much perfume. Charlotte said Ariel smelled like a cherry orchard. Ariel smiled at this, thanking her protector, and admitted she was a bit unsure about the scent, as it was her first time making such a perfume. Charlotte asked if Ariel had made the perfume herself, as she wanted to show it off. Ariel offered to give Charlotte a bottle of the new perfume as thanks. Charlotte said she had to refuse, as her body couldn't tolerate perfume. She was allergic to alcohol, something Ariel clearly knew. Charlotte's sensitivity to perfumes had been mentioned many times in the novel. To this, Ariel smiled and said she hadn't used any alcohol in making these perfumes. Ariel was thrilled by Charlotte's surprise, as this was her first attempt and it was a great success. Ariel asked her to demonstrate, so she could understand what she meant. The blonde girl agreed with a skeptical smile. Ariel sprayed some on her wrist, and the fragrance became richer, the sweet scent of lilac filling the room. The girl felt good, like she was surrounded by a bouquet of flowers. Ariel began to explain how she made these perfumes, saying she used a device to extract the magical essence of the fragrance, so even those with allergies could use it. She smiled and asked if this was the real reason Ariel had come to the ball. Charlotte cleverly guessed that Ariel was looking for investors. She began to explain her intuition. At first, Ariel had said it was just a hobby, but the results were as good as a professional's, leading her to conclude that Ariel was trying to get her attention. Charlotte let her know that she saw through her tactic of using Charlotte's inability to use perfume as a way to advertise. It was clear that these perfumes were made specifically for Charlotte. Ariel was flustered by such praise. The lady's sharpness made her uneasy. Charlotte said Ariel had nothing to be shy about, as anyone would fall in love with such a perfume. She said Ariel might lack sales skills, but the perfume itself was truly worthwhile. Charlotte explained that this praise didn't mean she would become her investor. The blonde girl smiled and announced she was inviting Ariel to her family's ball, where there would be many wealthy people. The madam was quite shocked by this invitation, which made her even more flustered, averting her gaze. Meanwhile, the advisor asked Cedric if he was going to attend the ball. The man replied that he should send Charlotte a confirmation. The maids began preparing Ariel for the ball, asking if she was nervous. Ariel was worried that Lena would be concerned, so she didn't tell her anything, but it was unclear what to do if this happened again. One maid began inquiring about who would be at the ball and why she was going. The loyal servant began comforting her, telling her she had the best perfume and offering that if anyone upset her, she should let her know. The madam laughed, realizing the maid was acting a bit strangely. Ariel concluded that she had already endured one evening, and she wouldn't tolerate such treatment again. The madam decided she was going to try and change people's perception of her. Finally, the madam was dressed and looked absolutely stunning. She made a set of rules for the evening, one of which was that she should approach others first, showing that she held no animosity. It was important to make it clear that she wasn't an enemy, but a businesswoman looking for investors. But due to her own insecurities, she spoke very unclearly, always stuttering. Everyone noticeably frowned when they heard her last name, asking again. Then they would start talking about how busy they were and that it would be best for her to leave. The girl was just relieved that no one directly accused her, and she had finally managed to introduce herself. She decided to try harder, desperately approaching people at the ball, but everyone Ariel tried to talk to frowned and looked at her suspiciously. Ariel felt incredibly awkward, sitting in the corner watching people, making her feel like an outsider. Ariel didn't understand what she was doing wrong, why these people acted as if she had killed someone and she didn't know what to do. To make people stop grimacing when they heard her name. Suddenly, Charlotte approached her, asking if she was enjoying the evening. The madam decided to open up to the blonde girl, admitting that she hadn't actually been able to start a conversation with anyone. Hearing this, Charlotte smiled and said she thought she knew what the problem was. She cupped Ariel's chin and asked what main value she could bring to the evening, considering the crowd here was full of distinguished rich people and ambitious businessmen wanting to succeed. She explained that in such a place, money was the most important thing, then added that these people didn't know about her talent and sense, and the only way to attract them was through profit. Realizing that people were interested in money and business, it suddenly clicked. She thought that if she wanted to make a name for herself as a businesswoman in need of investors, she should show off her perfumes first. Perhaps the main character was someone else, but for her, Ariel was the star. She declared that she had fallen in love with the perfumes and wanted to purchase or acquire more. Lady Charlotte was right. The girl needed to showcase the full allure of her perfumes. Suddenly, the madam turned to the ball guests who had been sneering just a moment ago. She sprayed a bit of perfume, saying that she made it herself, and invited them to try it. One of the ladies looked at them, decided to give it a try. The perfume was amazing, and of course, the lady completely fell in love with its scent and effect. Everyone in the room commented that it smelled even better than real flowers. Ariel smiled, thanking everyone for the compliments. Then the madam decided to make an announcement, declaring that she was opening her own market where more such perfumes could be sampled. She hastily mentioned that she needed a large sum of money to do this. And just then, someone suddenly approached from behind the girl. The lady with the bob haircut asked what was going on here. She inquired who made the perfume, and upon learning it was Ariel, Charlotte figured these ladies would get along well. This lady had a deeper understanding of perfume making. Ariel was surprised to find out that the newcomer was a novice like herself, so she thought they could be good-natured rivals. Ariel responded positively, albeit awkwardly, saying that this was a perfume she made herself. Her rival quickly claimed that it was clearly an inferior creation. Ariel was shocked by this jealous arrogance, not understanding why. If the girl was such a brilliant perfumer, she couldn't recognize what was missing. But as a talented individual, this was the girl's first time making a product for sale. Ariel thought maybe this lady could point out her mistakes and help her. The girl smiled awkwardly, asking her to repeat what she had just said. To this, her rival didn't hesitate to repeat all the insults about the perfume, completely unafraid of offending Ariel. Not wanting to appear rude, Ariel smiled and asked her to point out the mistakes, since she was such a talented competitor. The woman turned and explained that a fresh perfume should be citrus-based, with lemon and orange as the main ingredients. She also explained that these scents don't last. Ariel then asked, since citrus scents fade easily, what made this different from an ordinary citrus perfume? The expert abruptly asked what was so unique about Ariel's perfume, demanded a spritz to test it, and then dismissively declared there was nothing special about it. Everyone laughed, saying that an expert like Madame Magnus couldn't be wrong, and declared that Lady Ariel should learn from Madame Magnus. Ariel realized these people had already taken sides, and always would. She understood that she needed to fight to prove her perfume's worth. She quickly snatched the perfume from Magnus, declaring that she would let her experience the fragrance first before explaining anything. Just as she was about to spray the perfume directly in her opponent's face, the star of the evening appeared. Charlotte greeted Cedric, who smiled at the ladies, thanking them for the invitation. It turned out Cedric was the main investor and would be taking over someone's business. Turning, he saw Ariel, and she saw her ex-boyfriend looking tense. He asked what they were discussing with the lady. Her opponent truthfully replied that they were discussing Lady Ariel's perfume. She began to complain about how someone could bring such a cheap perfume to the party. Suddenly, the man began to defend his ex-girlfriend. He asked if Magnus had tried the perfume, and the Earl stated that the young lady's perfume was unique. He mentioned that his subordinates had greatly improved their work efficiency because of these perfumes, and he still enjoyed using them. The woman turned and asked if Magnus could create a similar perfume. The man stared sternly into her eyes and demanded that she not speak nonsense without understanding. Ariel was surprised that Cedric decided to defend her. Regardless, Ariel was annoyed because she didn't need help. She needed her perfume to be recognized. All the ladies, like a flock of sheep, began to say that since his lordship decided to defend the lady, Lady Winston's perfume deserved attention. Ariel turned and said she would be back in a moment, and with those words, she left the ball to think about the plan she needed. Cedric watched her and asked why she was leaving. The lady decided that if Magnus dared to provoke her again, from this moment on, Ariel would make them all write a book praising her perfume. She had had enough for one day and decided to go home and improve the formula. But suddenly Cedric called out to Ariel in a stern voice. He looked at her with concern and took a step forward. She asked why he was suddenly turning his attention back to her when the party was in full swing. Her hasty departure made him feel awkward. It was strange that someone like Cedric would care about her bad mood. Ariel reminded herself that she had to be strong. She needed to keep her distance from this man, but suddenly she declared that the Earl's behavior made her very unhappy. She explained that they had broken up, meaning he had no reason and no right to interfere in her affairs. She asked if he was completely over their relationship. Ariel claimed he was going too far and that she could have handled Madame Magnus herself. She explained that his intervention had disrupted her plans. Ariel felt uneasy saying these words. She wasn't quite sure if Cedric could understand everything. An advisor brought Cedric the necessary documents, saying His Highness was too impatient. Suddenly, he asked if his actions had caused trouble. At this moment, the man really panicked. He asked why she was acting so willfully without considering others. He just couldn't understand what was wrong with Her Highness, as if someone had scolded him. The advisor quickly retracted his words, for who would dare insult the Duke? He quickly concluded that it must have something to do with Lady Winston. When asked how he knew, the gentleman said she was often the cause of his bad moods. He pleaded with Cedric to share his problems, as he might have some helpful advice. The Duke began to speak, mentioning that the lady's pained expression prompted him to help her. He himself didn't understand why he followed her. He then tried to explain that she looked upset and he couldn't remain indifferent. The man cautiously recalled her desperate and annoyed expression and how she called him selfish. The advisor was completely shocked that Lady Winston dared to speak ill of His Highness. He admitted that it did indeed bother him. The blonde man realized Cedric had special feelings for the girl, and he found it heartwarming. He didn't know why, but Mrs. Winston had certainly changed a lot, so there was nothing to worry about. The advisor suddenly suggested apologizing to Mrs. Winston. He tried to explain why such a thing would displease the lady, even though the Duke meant well. The Duke turned his head and sighed, agreeing with the idea of apologizing to Ariel. He began writing a letter, ordering it to be delivered to the Winston estate at dawn. The maid smiled sweetly, handing Ariel Cedric's letter. She read the letter, which stated his behavior at the banquet was extremely inappropriate. He wrote that Ariel's words had made him reflect, and he wanted to apologize in person. Cedric invited her to a restaurant to apologize. She arrived in a small carriage pulled by 2 white horses. She thought he must be shocked, considering no one had ever treated Cedric like that, and maybe she had gone too far yesterday. However, she thought it wouldn't hurt to accept the apology, so she came. That's why Ariel was nervous. She didn't want to hurt anyone and then get hurt herself. She stopped the carriage because she wanted to walk. He pointed in a direction, showing her the location of the restaurant. With a little time before their appointment, she decided to take a walk. But suddenly there was a harsh sound. Someone had just taken a picture of Ariel from behind. When she discovered the camera, she was surprised and even more frightened. She yelled at the person holding the camera, demanding he put it away immediately, attracting the attention of those around her. The stranger acted strangely, turning around and running. She managed to grab his camera, which shocked her completely. She couldn't understand why the man ran so fast. It made no sense. Seeing him trying to escape, she quickly came up with a plan. She chased after him, shouting for someone to catch the pervert. He yelled back that he was just following orders as he ran. Suddenly, Cedric tripped him, and the guy fell to the ground. Thanks to this, Ariel caught the creep. He asked what trouble this poor fellow had caused. Ariel had a little difficulty speaking. She just needed to catch her breath. He suggested they go to the restaurant to talk. They forced the stranger to kneel, telling him it was wrong to secretly take pictures of others. She said she had grabbed the camera he dropped while running away. Cedric decided it was time to see the pictures taken. He saw a bunch of his own private photos. He said he had his own thoughts about this and would try to figure it out. Ariel was calm, knowing there was only one picture of her. Discovering the man had also taken pictures of Ariel, he frowned deeply. He demanded that security be notified, saying the man should be punished. They took the man away, leaving his former fiancée confused. Cedric lowered his head and apologized. He blamed himself, admitting he had arranged the meeting to apologize, but had caused her more trouble, which required another apology. The girl didn't understand why he apologized for every little thing. Ariel turned her head and said she was fine, not to worry. But then Ariel laughed, admitting she realized she had been rude and wanted to apologize. He said he hadn't been giving her the respect she deserved and owed her a lot of compensation. He added that even though their relationship had been bound by a contract, he hadn't taken good care of her. He also explained that the difficulties she faced after their breakup were partly his fault. He offered her some compensation. Suddenly, the lady was shocked, as the money would indeed come in handy right now. With just a flick of his wrist, he arranged for a personal bodyguard for her. The Duke declared that Ern would protect Ariel splendidly and would vouch for her with his life. When he removed his helmet, Ariel saw how handsome her bodyguard was. He said Mrs. Winston could trust him. A jealous Cedric demanded he put his helmet back on, saying a knight shouldn't reveal himself so easily. To this, Ariel objected, saying it would be too hot to stand around wearing a helmet. Ariel didn't understand why Cedric was giving her his knight. He replied that he could protect himself, while Ariel might need help in the future. It sounded strange, a little hurtful to the lady, but she figured nothing good would come from it if this happened again. This man was a knight acknowledged by Cedric, so he was trustworthy, Ariel said. She would accept all his kindness as compensation for the time being. Ariel smiled, telling him he could come back once she regained her strength, as she could take care of herself. The man knelt on one knee, bowed, took the lady's hand, kissed it, and asked for a favor. The girl smiled shyly and said she had to go, hurrying away. The man asked if he should escort Ariel out, but she replied that it wasn't necessary, as she wasn't a child who couldn't go out alone. She explained that her carriage was nearby and told Cedric not to worry, as Ern was close by. This made the man frown noticeably. Just as she was about to leave, the man called out to her again. He wanted to ask about the Anoxia perfume. He said he wanted to change the contract, which surprised Ariel. The girl immediately began to wonder if there was a problem with the delivery, even considering that he might lower the price under the pretense of providing bodyguard services. He began to talk about payment, but suddenly announced that he would double the price. In return, he requested to reinstate their regular twice-weekly meetings. The man stated that since the order was complex, he could pay more. Ariel couldn't understand why Cedric was suddenly acting this way. However, the Anoxia perfume was her most important asset, and if the payment increased, she could open her shop sooner. Ariel smiled and happily agreed, knowing how to make the most of this goodwill. The girl smiled at Cedric once more, waved to him, and said she looked forward to their next meeting. The Duke told her to be careful on her way home. When Ern arrived at the mansion, the housekeeper had a lot of questions. Ariel responded that there was no need to be afraid of the 2-meter-tall giant. Ern nodded and introduced himself, explaining that he was the bodyguard sent by the Duke. The housekeeper smiled and said she was glad to hear Ariel had someone to protect her. She approached the bodyguard and declared that now they could punish all the villains who dared to threaten the young lady. Ariel was completely shocked, muttering that it was a good thing they got along. Raphael entered the room with the ingredients delivered today and placed them in the workshop. Entering the perfume room, she felt the pure, fresh scent, so refreshing it swept away all unnecessary thoughts. She reached out and touched the fresh pine branches, releasing their invigorating aroma. Suddenly, the housekeeper suggested that they should grind them as soon as possible this time. They used a magical device to extract the essence this time. Ariel decided she needed to choose a purpose for this scent. Ern stood behind her, observing carefully. A clear, pure, and fresh scent, the kind that Ariel's new bodyguard seemed to really like. Looking at the bodyguard, she decided she had settled on a concept. The young lady took the man's hand. She asked for his help. The bodyguard looked embarrassed and started to get nervous. Everyone was curious when the man entered the room. Ariel had bought some expensive clothes for her bodyguard, figuring it was a good investment and they really suited him. Ern asked why she went to so much trouble, and Ariel told him not to think of her as his boss. He wondered why she thought he could actually help, and she replied that it was obvious because he could really help her realize her plan. Ariel decided to make Ern the face of a high society club. She sprayed the new product on the man's wrist. The perfume, named Morning Stroll, was based on cedarwood extract, to which Ariel added bergamot, vibrant bamboo notes, and finally, a touch of fresh lemon. Ariel's bodyguard was impressed by her talent. Suddenly, a man appeared in the hall, saying he hadn't met Ariel yet and wanted to get to know her. The girl quickly approached and introduced herself as a brilliant perfumer. He said he had heard of her because she created Lady Charlotte's perfume. Ariel said she was very honored. It was a great honor to be recognized. The stranger declared that the lilac scent had completely captivated him. After smelling the fragrance on the bodyguard, he concluded that this fresh and unparalleled scent was also Ariel's work. The man simply confirmed it with a straight face. The man began to praise her perfume, saying it felt like being in a pine forest, the fresh scent bringing calmness. Because the perfume suited the gentleman so well, this feeling was even stronger. The long-haired man expressed his interest and desire to wear the perfume himself. She began to explain that this scent wasn't suitable for her, and if she wore it herself, it wouldn't create the right impression. She asked the gentleman if he knew that scents could tell you a lot about a person. An energetic scent represented energy, a warm scent meant gentleness, and a luxurious scent could truly leave an impression. She said that perhaps if he wore this perfume, he would be a perfect match for the bodyguard, particularly suited to his face and gaze. The man immediately pulled out his money and asked where and how he could purchase the perfume. He then expressed his desire to purchase 3 bottles of perfume on the spot. Ariel knew that these people were VIPs of a high society club, and word of her perfume would spread quickly. Ariel, thrilled by the business, said she would have the goods delivered to their residences. The girl in the perfume shop sprayed several bottles of perfume. She gritted her teeth, trembling with rage, and shrieked that Ariel Winston had caused her a lot of trouble. Everything had gone wrong since they ignored her. All the investors wanted magic sprites, but they didn't understand she couldn't do it, even though Ariel could. This land, her competitor's property, had unexpectedly been re-evaluated, skyrocketing in value, and opening a shop there might have been a huge mistake. The lady seemed to have gone mad, hating Ariel for daring to humiliate her in front of all the investors. She vowed to get revenge on Ariel no matter what. Suddenly, a figure appeared behind the girl, asking if she was Magnus. The stranger smiled, saying that Ariel had indeed humiliated her in public. Magnus asked who he was, and the stranger asked her not to be so harsh. He then suggested they join forces against Ariel, but the lady wouldn't sign anything or start a collaboration before knowing who this person was. The person lowered his hood, introducing himself as Oz, the 5th prince of the empire. The girl was utterly shocked that the prince had offered to join forces with her against her main enemy. When asked why he wanted to cooperate with her, he replied that he hated Cedric Evans. He handed the girl a photo, slandering the Lord in various ways. Seeing the explicit photos, she didn't know what to think and just frowned. The lady asked in surprise why he wanted to go after Mr. Evans. To this, he said he had been looking for his weaknesses but hadn't succeeded. The girl said it was normal because he was the perfect duke. But he continued, saying that he had discovered who Ariel Winston was, Cedric's only obsession. He then said he found out they had recently broken up, which surprised the girl because they seemed close. The person replied that their relationship had always been complicated. That was precisely why he decided to win Ariel's heart with his charm. The lady said it was absurd, and he replied that all was fair in love and war. He extended his hand to Magnus, saying he would help her, so she needed to do everything to ruin Ariel's business. Next, when she was down and out, he would make his move and make her fall in love with him. Magnus thought this crazy plan was harmless. They couldn't be sure if this person had genuine feelings for Ariel. The person thought it would be amusing to see Cedric rejected and crying, while Magnus thought it would be hilarious to watch Ariel's business fail. After shaking hands, the man and woman reached an agreement. The person smiled, saying it was time to start acting. A few days later, Ariel was walking in town, calling for Raphael. The man looked up from tending the flowers and greeted her. The lady thanked him for the ingredients he provided. She said the new perfume she made using cedarwood extract had become very popular. Not only was the perfume popular, but it had also monopolized the men's fragrance market. The lady said that at this rate, she would soon be able to open her own shop. The man looked at her awkwardly and asked her to take a walk with him. He mentioned that a new shop had opened yesterday, and he thought she should check it out. When she got there, the girl found it was a new Magnus salon. She decided to peek inside, discovering the salon's layout, noticing many products besides perfume. At one point, the girl suspected that word of the feud with that rival had spread. The man said it might be a good thing for her to check out the shop. The salon was packed with people excited that Lady Magnus had opened a shop. The perfumes smelled good and were reasonably priced, which pleased the people. Suddenly, the lady found her own perfume being sold there, with a faint scent of lilac wafting around. It was suspicious. It seemed that this girl had indeed stolen Ariel's perfume. Smelling another perfume, she caught that distinctive cedarwood scent, also clearly stolen from her. The man told the girl to check the names of the perfumes. The titles were Memories of First Love and Evening Stroll. This was exactly what the man wanted to show. The shop had stolen all of her creations. Ariel was speechless, as the situation was already quite clear. Fanta had indeed presented her precious formulas as cheap imitations, a vengeful humiliation aimed directly at Ariel. Ariel realized with fury that Fanta Magnus was indeed challenging her, attempting to thoroughly humiliate and belittle her. Suddenly, Fanta and her associates appeared, proclaiming how such a cheap thing had finally made its way into this high-end shop. She said it had been a while, emphasizing how the brilliant perfumer Ariel Winston was going door to door peddling her wares, adding to her humiliation. Ariel was driven mad by these remarks from her greatest enemy. Suddenly, Ariel looked up at the man standing behind Magnus, who was sneering and nodding, and realized she must have seen that familiar face somewhere before. Noticing Ariel's gaze, he winked and smiled at her, trying to entice her. Suddenly, Ariel remembered where she had seen that handsome face. She realized it was the fifth prince of the Beller Empire. In the novel, he was portrayed as a dazzlingly handsome man, the Empress's biggest headache. The most important thing about Oz's character was that he was Cedric's nephew. Perhaps because Cedric was too perfect, Oz hated him and was extremely jealous of his uncle. He tentatively inquired about Ariel's identity. The man looked directly into her eyes and asked if she had any complaints about him. Fanta rushed to boast that a member of the royal family had become her investor. Magnus began to belittle and mock Ariel, saying she was worthless. Her rival sneered, telling Ariel not to worry, because someday someone would discover Ariel's non-existent talent. Ariel just couldn't understand why this woman was selling stolen perfume with such audacity. She guessed that Oz might have been tricked into becoming an investor. Ariel, realizing she couldn't let this go, asked what inspired her to create these perfumes, trying to catch her off guard. Ariel immediately pointed out that these perfumes were very familiar to her. Too familiar. Fanta remained silent, which annoyed Ariel, demanding that she at least say something. Oz tried to defend the situation, saying that of course Fanta wouldn't respond, as it was his concept. Oz began to fabricate lies with all his might, concocting a story about how the lilac and bamboo had captivated him, and pleaded to stop harassing poor Fanta. Ariel realized with shock that Oz was in cahoots with this girl, and she hadn't tricked him at all. Suddenly, Magnus couldn't hold back any longer and started saying that she knew Ariel wanted to say she stole the formulas. But as it turned out, the girl wasn't even hiding it, claiming that no one would believe someone who didn't even have their own shop. And with Fanta's powerful investor status, Ariel couldn't prove this deception and theft at all. The girl laughed and gestured for Ariel to leave. Rosalina, in turn, realized that even a short departure would cause a huge queue, as everyone adored these perfumes. The man winked at the lady again, implying they would meet again, perhaps very soon. Ariel concluded that, thanks to Magnus, she realized how necessary it was to have her own shop. She decided to find an investor at all costs. The man returned to his room, sighed deeply, and began to loosen his tie. The advisor immediately rushed to his master's side and asked how everything went. He also asked if the master had had lunch during his meeting with the merchants. To this, the master declared that those conversations and gatherings were simply unbearable. The advisor then shared some good news with the Duke, saying there were rumors on Southwest Street today that Miss Ariel was looking for an investor. Then he understood why the girl had appeared at the party. The advisor told him it was a good opportunity, as the master himself had praised her perfumes. To this, he replied that he didn't think he was the person the lady wanted to see. Then the man shared that he had heard the girl had encountered an unpleasant incident. As far as he knew, her perfume concept had been stolen, but he didn't know the details, as he had heard it from someone else. Suddenly, he glared fiercely at the man, ordering Rick to find out all the details of this matter. The maid wanted to wake Miss Ariel, but found her in the perfume room, also realizing that the young lady was indeed diligent. Upon reaching the right place, the maid found Ariel asleep on her notebook, apparently having fallen asleep while trying to come up with new concepts. Ariel woke up and started drinking tea while the maid tidied her desk. A sleepy Ariel thanked Lena, saying she had revived her. The maid anxiously asked if the mistress was all right, to which the mistress replied that everything was fine, just a splitting headache and an itchy nose. The maid asked how she could say she only spent 2 hours when she had been working on perfumes all night. The pink-haired maid explained that otherwise, they wouldn't be able to meet with any investors. Worried, the maid said that Ariel still needed to take care of her health. She told Ariel that she was going to prepare the bathwater for the madam and that Ariel must go to sleep afterward, with no arguments. Despite Ariel's exhaustion, the results were worth it. She had developed new products and drafted a business plan, leaving only the task of finding investors. Ariel immediately decided that staying up all night had been a wise decision. Suddenly, the butler announced that they had a visitor for the madam. Ariel was surprised to learn that the visitor was Cedric. Amusingly, Cedric's advisor looked as tired as Ariel felt. The young woman went downstairs to inquire about the reason for his visit. The Duke stated that the matter was urgent and apologized for not informing her beforehand. He mentioned that in their relationship, it wasn't just the perfume she made for him that was considered urgent. Cedric then revealed he'd heard rumors about her perfume formula being stolen. He handed her a product made with her stolen perfume. Ariel was surprised that the rumors had spread so quickly. She looked up sadly and asked him if he believed her, considering the possibility that she might have stolen the perfume herself. To this, he said that he had tried many perfumes she created, and this cheap trick wouldn't fool him. Suddenly, Cedric mentioned that he had heard she was looking for investors and offered to take on that role. Cedric already managed many businesses, and if this reliable businessman and investor invested in her business, it was sure to succeed. But the young woman suspected that he was only offering out of guilt. Ariel had a strong feeling that she was taking advantage of Cedric. But speaking of investments, the lady had her conditions, which she believed he wouldn't mind. The investor requested to see everything she had prepared, and he would be happy to choose whatever he deemed necessary. The young woman had prepared a unique rose perfume. Ariel took the Duke's hand and invited him to the laboratory, as she could show him everything right now. Lena was instructed to prepare everything so the new investor could see what he would be investing in. First, the young woman presented the business plan she had spent the day preparing. Ariel's primary goal was to open a salon, and she had laid out the opening plan, including ideas for new products. She was more nervous than she thought, afraid that he wouldn't like her plan, or worse, her products. But suddenly, Cedric declared that the business plan was excellent, and he was impressed. The young woman shared that she wanted to supply perfumes to the royal court in the future, and opening a second shop wouldn't be bad either. Ariel apologized for her overly enthusiastic words, but then the Duke said he wanted to test the new product and asked if he could. The lady readily agreed, explaining that the perfume was called Rose Garden, and she used velvet roses and Turkish roses as the main ingredients. It highlighted a pure and flawless scent, and men could experience a different rose fragrance than other perfumes on the market. She sprayed the perfume on his wrist, and the advisor said the scent was like being in a garden in the early morning, surrounded by the most enchanting roses and dewdrops. The scent was the embodiment of a noble rose bush. The captivating fragrance made it seem as if the Duke was being showered with rose petals. The Duke himself asserted that such a scent couldn't be found elsewhere. The young woman felt differently when Cedric, and not her servants, praised her, since he had approved not only the business plan, but also the product. He stated that the business plan was so detailed that it was hard to believe it was the work of a novice, and Ariel had proven her exceptional skills in perfume making. Finally, he announced his decision to invest in the business, saying that Ariel wouldn't disappoint Cedric. They left, looking forward to their next meeting. The advisor reported that their trip to the Winston estate had not been in vain. Indeed, he had successfully secured an excellent project, and it seemed he would soon witness the couple's reconciliation. Surprisingly, he already knew who to suspect. He declared that this could cause trouble for Lady Winston, so they had to keep a close eye on this person. Cedric was genuinely honored by the prospect of becoming Lady Winston's partner and sharing all her problems. The maid began praising the young woman and congratulating her on their soon-to-be open shop. Ariel said that Lena had also done a great job. Despite Cedric's help, things were still hectic, and she decided to handle the shop matters herself. Ariel was restless from wasting time and reluctant to rest. Just as she was wondering when Cedric would contact her, the knight and the maid suddenly rushed into her room, announcing that the Duke had sent the requested information. The shop's construction was complete. The group set off to inspect the shop, or rather, Ariel's perfume shop. The young lady was surprised by this news, as the Duke had said it would take at least a few months. In fact, His Grace had requested that the construction be completed as soon as possible. Upon entering the shop, she was overcome with excitement, gasping in delight as she stepped inside. Ariel could hardly believe that this was truly her shop. Cedric informed her that there was a second floor for living quarters. The shop had a main hall, a kitchen, and, most surprisingly, a laboratory. Ariel had always dreamed of owning her own shop, and when she realized that this lifelong dream had actually come true, she almost burst into tears. But the surprises didn't end there. The shop also had its own garden where Ariel could grow the plants needed to make her perfumes. While the young lady was examining the flowers, the maid announced that she wanted to try out the kitchen and asked if anyone would like some tea. But the knight suddenly apologized, saying that it wasn't the best time for tea as there were already customers waiting at the door. The young lady was utterly shocked. They hadn't even properly advertised the shop, yet a crowd had already gathered. Meanwhile, a jealous rival was observing the opening, realizing that she hadn't managed to break Ariel's spirit or prevent her aspirations of becoming a perfumer. The girl stormed into Callan's room, calling him a fool. She concluded that the man only spoke pretty words and was, in fact, useless. Magnus yelled, saying that at a time like this, the man actually had the audacity to sleep while all the customers were going to Ariel. The pale-faced man said it was just a minor issue, not worth getting so worked up about. Magnus shouted that people were flocking to Ariel's salon before it had even officially opened, meaning not only would no one visit her shop, but now Cedric was Ariel's investor. The blonde man reported that he had already investigated the situation. The girl declared that he should have deprived the young lady of investors from the start, instead of getting caught up in trivial matters, especially since he had promised to patronize Ariel. He said that Finta was too short-sighted, because to truly drive someone to despair, one needed to give them a taste of victory first, and then take it away. The man told her that she should follow his lead, as he had a way to implement a good plan. Finally, the workday ended, and Ariel saw off the last customer. The day had been a success. The shop was officially open. It had been a week since the grand opening. The young lady served customers during the day and made perfumes after sunset, managing the shop's affairs. She realized that running a business wasn't easy, but what pleased the young lady most was watching the money accumulate. The young lady concluded that Cedric would be pleased with such a profit, but first, she declared she needed to go out and replenish her supplies. Ariel walked through the city, thinking about her need for cloves, roses, and cedar. She was about to say that she would quickly buy what she needed and return when she noticed that everyone in town was staring at her. The people instantly disappeared, and Ariel realized they were avoiding her. Suddenly, Raphael rushed up to the young lady, asking if she had noticed the strange behavior of those around her. He shared what had happened when their shop opened. Two suspicious figures in cloaks appeared on Flower Street, trying to get them to promise not to sell ingredients to Ariel's perfume shop, offering 20 million pesos a day in return. Ariel immediately understood that this was the work of Magnus and Colin. It made sense because without ingredients, she couldn't make perfumes, and customers would flock to Magnus' shop. She had anticipated that they would create some obstacles, but she hadn't expected them to be so clumsy. He told her that he personally refused, as he was on the young lady's side. But then Ariel declared that she wouldn't just take this lying down and would take appropriate action. At the table, the young lady shared that last night she was thinking about a way out. She had two options. The first was to pay exorbitant fees to attract merchants, and the second was to grow the ingredients herself in their garden. But due to the lack of necessary resources, the choice was obvious. Suddenly, the maid asked if it was their turn to act. Although he seemed insignificant, royal blood still flowed through his veins, and she could be arrested for insulting the royal family. The young lady was surprised when Cedric suddenly appeared before her. The knight told her that he had contacted Cedric because he felt that the young lady was in a rather difficult situation. He believed His Highness could help Ariel. Ariel realized that he was right, because if Cedric intervened, they wouldn't have to worry about this problem. He was the girl's investor, which was reason enough to ask for his intervention. But the pale-faced woman suddenly announced that she wanted to handle this matter herself, without any outside interference. Ariel pleaded with the Duke like a child to at least give her some advice. He asked if she knew Gilbert, as she was the head of a major trading guild. She was also in charge of handling the turnover of various goods. Her trading guild had connections with many noble families and played a significant role in the Bell Empire's economy. He had heard that Jenna had now settled down on the Bell border. Cedric suggested that the young lady make a deal with that lady. When they arrived at their destination, it felt like they had stepped out of the capital and into another country. The blue-haired man greeted the girls, extending his hand and eagerly inquiring about the purpose of their visit. Ariel introduced herself and explained that she was there to see Lady Jenna, which surprised the man, and he invited them to follow him. Suddenly, Ariel realized Cedric was right. Everything she was looking for was here, and it was all fresh. The young lady made up her mind to secure this deal, no matter what. Jenna asked her guests where they came from. The girl mentioned she was from the Winston family, to which the other replied that she didn't want to waste time with pleasantries and stated directly that she didn't want to make the deal. She apologized, saying she should have studied trading guild etiquette before her visit. The blonde woman laughed, surprised that Miss Ariel had actually done so. She promised to teach the young lady the etiquette of the trading guilds, as it wasn't complicated. Charlotte explained that the most important thing for trading guilds was the merchandise, and Lady Jenna only spoke to those who brought items she liked. She brought out a gold vase inlaid with jewels. Ariel realized she liked expensive items, and, if necessary, she wanted to give her some perfume, but she didn't know anything about her. The girl inquired if there was any information about what would be a more suitable gift. Charlotte then said that she had heard they had recently been plagued by scalen birds. Scalens were birds with very nasty tempers, and they loved to hunt, so they often caused trouble for travelers in the woods. These birds had a highly developed sense of smell, and every time someone wanted to catch them, they could smell humans and fly away. Charlotte offered to go there herself to demonstrate her wild bird hunting skills, but she suddenly changed her mind, saying she didn't have enough time, and then recommended a close friend of hers for the role. Ariel choked on her tea when she found out this friend was Cedric. Suddenly, the blonde woman asked her why she was so surprised, asking if she didn't like Cedric. However, it wasn't about whether she liked him or not, but because in the original story, he was such a terrifying character that no one dared to mention his name. However, after meeting him in person, she found him to be very different from the character in the novel. Despite such first impressions, he acted incredibly sensitive and polite. Thus, her feelings for Cedric began to show, which frightened her considerably. Ariel hastened to explain that their relationship was purely that of an investor and a business owner, and she found it difficult to engage with him on a personal level. The young lady felt that she had strayed from her original goal, as she had also recently wanted to end their relationship completely. The girl pondered what she would do when the female lead appeared. Indeed, the young lady thought that although she had a closer relationship with the Duke, he was too busy and would probably be unable to help her. But this turned out not to be the case, as Cedric made it clear that as an investor, it was his duty to help the girl, and nothing was more important than that. Ariel thought that Cedric, as a human, might also need a change of environment, which fueled his desire to help. He offered to help the young lady onto her horse, seating her in front of him and carefully holding her hand. The Duke kept thinking, trying to convince himself, repeating that his relationship with Ariel was purely business, and their sole objective was business cooperation. However, he really couldn't understand why she was so captivating and why he wanted to spend more and more time with her. Cedric was happy to have the opportunity to showcase the hunting grounds under the duchy's control. He suggested helping the girl off her horse to look around, as scalen birds were known to frequent the area. As they walked through the dense forest, he suddenly asked the young lady to stop, as he heard strange sounds that could foreshadow an attack. The man warned to be extra careful, as scalens liked shiny and beautiful things, and the bird was staring at the girls. Suddenly, the enormous bird let out a wild cry and lunged at Cedric, intending to attack and rob him. The man reacted swiftly, taking the brunt of the attack himself, and told the young lady to hide behind him. He judged that the creature needed to be captured, so he fired a special weapon, enveloping the bird in a net. But then it started making pitiful sounds, crying and trying to cover its face with its wings. The bird appeared to have an injured leg. When Ariel tried to approach, Cedric stopped her, warning her not to be fooled by these cunning tricks. But suddenly, a triumphant smile spread across the crying bird's face, and with a screech, it broke free from its restraints and soared into the sky. The bird grabbed the servants' heads, actually pulling out clumps of their hair. Cedric looked at the young lady, asking if she was all right, but she was completely unharmed, only shocked by the actions. The hunters concluded that the rumors were indeed true. These birds had a very nasty disposition. The maid suggested hiding, but that was pointless, as these flying creatures could find them by scent. The feathers of this terrible beast gave off a urine-like stench, making everyone wrinkle their noses, but Ariel actually liked the smell, as it came from musk, if her memory served her correctly. If sufficiently dried and mixed with alcohol, it could become an excellent base note, adding softness and nobility to all ingredients. The young lady realized that she could make a wonderful gift for Jenna with this. The servants, and not only them, really couldn't understand how these stinky feathers could be turned into a beautiful perfume. But believing their lady had a plan, they still collected the feathers. The young lady herself also knew that the request to collect such a stench sounded strange, but the man said she must have a reason for needing such an ingredient. Back at the perfumery, the young lady finally completed the required perfume, which she called Tyrant Musk Accord. Ariel, pleased to finally be finished, suggested the maid try it herself, but Rena was very scared and even a little disgusted by the perfume made from those feathers, as their smell reminded her of urine. The maid decided to trust her lady, and upon opening the bottle, she smelled a soft, sweet fragrance. At the same time, this aroma enveloped her with a warm, pleasant feeling. Captivated by this wonderful perfume, Rena mistook the knight for her lady and hugged him. The musk's effect was much stronger than Ariel had anticipated, so she decided the dosage needed to be adjusted to avoid similar incidents. The maid, impressed, remarked that it took immense talent to completely transform the smell of urine. This perfume was special, and she called it the perfume that could tame the Scalen birds. Jenna expressed her hope that this wasn't a waste of time, and Ariel asked her to trust her, promising to make her satisfied. Ariel mixed special ingredients, which were very close to the scent of the deep forest where the Scalen birds dwelled. The perfumer applied the liquid to the woman's wrist, letting her experience its essence. Jenna called it the essence of nature, as after the pungent smell dissipated, a rich, wild aroma remained. Ariel claimed that this wild scent could really help the merchant, and she wanted the lady to verify it herself. Having said this, the young lady very confidently suggested they should set off. Even Rena noticed something strange happening in the forest, as they really saw Scalen birds peering from the bushes with predatory gazes. The creatures truly surrounded them, and the startled maid asked if this was expected. Ariel explained that the scent of the forest hunter was the sharp scent of the forest ruler, and thanks to this scent, the Scalen birds would mistake the woman for a rival. It felt like a welcoming ceremony for a new friend. Jenna said she would try to trust these perfumes, but suddenly, the one judged to be the leader of the flock by its size flew high up. The lady extended her hand towards the Scalen bird, wanting to see if it would submit, but after sniffing around, the huge flying creature began to attack and screech, taking a fighting stance and spreading its wings upwards. The young lady started to panic, as her seemingly perfect perfume appeared to be completely ineffective. The woman declared she had no choice and took out a small dagger, but suddenly the creature fell on its back, demanding belly rubs and feather strokes. Jenna started stroking and scratching its belly, which was met with gentle sounds. Everyone really started to think the girl had made a mistake, but it turned out that she was indeed a brilliant perfumer as rumored, and this was not just a rumor, but her personal, true ability. Ariel worried that the strong musk scent would have side effects, but fortunately, everything was fine, as the musk scent could also stimulate feelings of excitement, and the Scalen bird quickly accepted Jenna as its master, not an enemy, or even just a friend. Approaching Ariel, the woman said she didn't know her headache would become so submissive, and now there was no need to hunt the Scalen birds anymore. Jenna shared that she liked the scent because it was so captivating, and also mentioned that she was really looking forward to future collaborations. She decided she should return the favor for the perfume, so she gifted Ariel a large supply of ingredients, including fresh base materials and many rare and unique products. In one of the boxes, the girl found a bottle of magic-enhancing potion. Ariel's notebook contained a record of this potion, stating that it could enhance the effects of perfumes. The young lady used it to create several products in one go. But suddenly, after testing her perfume on Rena again, the girl realized something was wrong. All the bottles looked the same, and she couldn't tell which was which. Ariel realized it was a huge failure, as people who smelled the scent began to flirt with each other, feeling intensely aroused. The perfumer was at a loss, surrounded by chaos. Suddenly, a duke appeared at the mansion and asked, "What's going on here?" But just as the maid was about to try another bottle, all the bottles fell and shattered, spilling onto Cedric's pants, enveloping him in an overly sweet scent. The girl knew that if Cedric was affected by the side effects, she wouldn't survive. Ariel was about to ask if her investor was all right when suddenly Lena started kissing her mistress's hand, proclaiming that she would serve only her forever, no one else. The knight started shouting that Miss Winston could entrust him with anything, and he could accomplish it perfectly right now. The Duke said he was surprised by Ariel's decision to add the enhancing potion. The girl claimed she wanted to add a little spice to her perfume. Surprisingly, the perfume had no effect on the man at all. He explained that nothing worked on him except perfumes from Onyxia. The Duke mentioned that he came to inquire about the deal with the trade guild, but ended up witnessing such an interesting scene. Suddenly, he stated that true magic perfumes would be valuable to the business, as their advantages were obvious. The girl suggested they discuss these details elsewhere. Everyone started advertising her perfumes as magic perfumes, even capable of healing illnesses and wounds. Customers inquired about the prices of these magic perfumes, eager to experience their effects and couldn't wait to try them. But suddenly, Ariel smiled apologetically and informed them that these perfumes were not for sale. Everyone was furious, because if they didn't return with the perfumes, their mistresses would really kill them. And Ariel herself couldn't explain why these perfumes weren't for sale. Suddenly, 3 girls entered the perfume shop and asked if she was Miss Winston. The perfumer asked the children to leave, saying the magic perfumes were not for sale. But they suddenly shouted, claiming they weren't there to buy, but to place an order. They began to explain that one of them suffered from severe insomnia, and all the methods they had tried seemed ineffective. When asked what was going on, the girls said that the boys at the academy often harassed Sasha, and it had become a trauma that kept her from sleeping. The poor child suddenly fainted from lack of sleep, but the girls managed to catch her, saying they would definitely help her. With tears in their eyes, the girls pleaded with the great perfumer for help. After thinking for a few seconds, Ariel found it hard to refuse them, so she agreed, but with one condition. The young lady smiled slyly and declared that for Sasha's sake, they would have to make a sacrifice. The children started saying that no sacrifice could scare them, because the insomniac girl was their only friend. Actually, the girls just needed to try the perfumes together, as it was a new product. This perfume could bring back warm memories. The young lady modified the formula in Ariel's scent diary, using sweet and warm spices like cocoa and tonka bean. Ariel added freshness and depth to the scent with grapefruit and pomelo essential oils. Warm memories had the effect that Sasha desperately needed right now. Ariel sprayed the perfume on her wrist, reminding her of the mousse cake the girls had eaten yesterday. Sasha realized she was recalling the memory of them eating dessert together. The girl claimed that the perfume gave a sense of security with its warm, sweet, and comforting scent. After hearing these words, the children immediately began to fall asleep, feeling warmer and more comfortable inside. These perfumes could evoke memories, making you feel more at peace. Actually, the original perfume would put people into an eternal sleep, but Ariel made a slight adjustment to the formula. But suddenly, the perfumer feared the side effect might really be that. Eternal sleep. Upon waking up, Sasha mentioned that it was the first time she had slept so soundly in a long time. The girl asked how much the perfume cost because of its effect. She wanted to buy some, but the young lady just smiled gently and said that since the little girl liked it, she would give it to her as a gift. Suddenly, Sasha decided to become Ariel's follower and eventually told her about it. Led by Sasha, all the girls wanted to join. But then, the young lady remembered that these girls, as followers of the original Ariel, had caused a lot of harm. But the children begged her not to refuse them, saying they were willing to do anything she asked. Lena and the knight were on their way to buy the ingredients needed for the perfume when Lena suddenly spotted a rat. After hitting the poor animal, she hurried to her destination. The hooded man, after observing the others, walked towards the pale-faced fellow. Mr. Cain was sitting on the porch, drinking tea and reading a book. The man reported that the rumors about Ariel making magic perfume turned out to be true. He also mentioned that the Winston family's influence was growing rapidly. Then, the gentleman announced that, although he didn't want to, he had to take the lady's magic perfume. He gave the man another task, to break into the shop and steal the recipe diary. Ariel talked about how Mrs. Jenna could help her secure a deal in the western region, but it was just a plan for now, though she would do her best. Ariel mentioned that they were preparing a party to celebrate the opening. Cedric was very surprised, so Ariel suggested he come too. Upon learning that Ariel would also be present, the Duke agreed, adding that he hadn't been able to properly congratulate her on the opening. Cedric said he would wait for the lady to contact him. Ariel thanked Lena for setting the table so beautifully. Suddenly, a blonde lady approached Ariel and congratulated her on the opening. Ariel received flowers from everyone who came to the party, congratulating her on the opening of her perfume shop. Ariel expressed her gratitude for this. She thanked them all for coming. Even the main investor arrived with a bouquet of pink flowers, praising the beauty of the shop. After handing the flowers to Ariel, Cedric hurriedly removed a petal from her pink hair. She even gave some of the girls small bottles of perfume, saying it would help them find true love. They said they would use it on their most important day. A man approached the Duke, saying it was a great honor to meet him, but Cedric barely acknowledged him, not even looking at him. Noticing the direction of the man's gaze, he immediately asked what his relationship was with the lady. He replied in a low voice that he was her investor. Then, Raphael introduced himself, saying he owned a flower shop. Upon hearing this, Raphael sighed dreamily and wished him good business. Suddenly, Ariel herself came over and asked what they were talking about so intently. She mentioned that Lena and the children had prepared a simple game and suggested they join in. Cedric then said that he thought it was time for him to leave. The Duke, having stayed for a long time, said he had enjoyed himself and left the party. The blonde lady suddenly said she was very surprised that His Highness, always so busy, had come to this event. So Ariel explained that he was an investor and it was only right for him to attend. But the blonde lady continued, saying that no investor would look at her with that kind of gaze, and she was surprised that Ariel hadn't noticed anything. The blonde lady mentioned that his gaze was so intense that she even worried it would burn a hole in Ariel's dress. One of the children also said that she believed Cedric liked Ariel because Luna's intuition was never wrong. To this, Ariel tried to explain that the Duke had no feelings for her, just as she had none for him. Ariel knew in her heart that Cedric had his destined heroine, so it was impossible for him to fall in love with her. A man watched the celebration secretly from a corner, muttering to himself that he had finally found Ariel Winston. Strangely, the mere mention of the lady lifted Cedric's spirits somewhat. The advisor immediately warned the Duke that the Fifth Prince had sent a spy to Lady Winston's shop. He immediately turned to leave, but the advisor tried to stop him, pointing out his recent ill health. The advisor offered to send another night, but the Duke insisted that he was enough. The spy concluded that all he had to do was steal the perfume formula and make a fortune. He began rummaging through the drawers for the diary when suddenly Cedric appeared behind him with a menacing aura. He swiftly brought the spy to his knees and slammed his head against the floor. After ensuring the shop was secure, he ordered the spy to be taken away and then went home. The advisor was shocked, wondering if the Duke had overestimated his own strength. But in an instant, the spy's accomplice appeared before him with a long sword. Drawing his dagger, the investor engaged in battle. But his opponent successfully blocked the attack with his weapon, pushing away the heavy blade. The assassin managed to deflect the attack and tear Cedric's clothes, causing Cedric to demand to know who sent him. But he only said that he would turn the Duke back into a monster and then threw a bottle emitting a strange odor. Cedric covered his nose, realizing it was a demonic scent. After calling Cedric a monster, he stepped back. The scent of Arnoxia was a temporary antidote, turning Cedric back into an ordinary human. The stranger claimed he would soon find out everything and then said goodbye. Cedric collapsed when he realized he couldn't control himself. Ariel woke up in her warm and cozy bed. She touched the rose petals she received yesterday and found they were still fresh. Suddenly hearing a strange noise, the girl heard Reyna shouting. She declared it was dangerous here and Ariel should stay away from the Duke lying on the floor. But Ariel approached him and asked if he was all right. She wondered why he was here, and he just fell asleep on her shoulder. Cedric mentioned that Ariel's scent was indeed soothing. Hours later, the Duke apologized for any inconvenience caused. Suddenly, Ariel asked Cedric who he had fought with, as he looked rather disheveled. To avoid the question, he stated that he needed to leave. The next customer was a light-haired girl in a pink outfit. She inquired if Duke Evans had just left the shop. Suddenly, the customer wanted a perfume that would make someone fall in love with her. Ariel had initially tried to make such a perfume as well, but all attempts failed. The lady asked Ariel why she was so sure she could make such a perfume. To this, the stranger replied that she overheard Lady Luna and Lady Elon whispering. Ariel quickly explained that those words were just childish nonsense. Then the customer claimed that she knew Ariel and Cedric were closer than before. The blonde lady handed Ariel a box and told her to look inside. It was a very rare plant from the Narcissus Mountains. Legend has it that the goddess Aphim fell in love with a shepherd at first sight, and when he returned her affections, they planted this herb and used it as incense. Ariel was unfamiliar with the legend, but she knew the effects of this perfume very well. It had such a captivating scent that there were even legends that it could bewitch the heart. The lady went to great lengths to acquire it, but she failed. So, the customer asked who Ariel liked enough to go to such great lengths for. She claimed Ariel would be surprised when she saw who she wanted to make fall in love with her. That person turned out to be the Baron's son, Cain. Ariel immediately concluded that he must be exceptionally handsome. Ariel told her that she understood Cleo. Then, the blonde lady shared that they had been friends for 10 years, but she wanted to confess her feelings to him, because she heard the effect only lasts a week, but she didn't care as long as she could win his heart. She suddenly wondered what was the point of love gained through magic. Ariel agreed to the girl's terms, but at the same time, the perfumer also warned that it was her first time seeing this plant, so the chances of failure were high. Magnus yelled at his ally because all her plans had failed again. They even bribed the florist, but Ariel made a deal with the president of a major chamber of commerce. To this, the man just snorted, saying that if the lady knew how to make perfume, they wouldn't have had to go to such extremes. But suddenly, the blonde lady smiled and declared that Fanti needn't worry, as she had a brilliant plan. She explained that St. Catherine's Day was coming soon. Cain confidently stated that he would surely win Ariel's heart at the festival. Ariel began working on the love perfume. She was quite successful, as it evoked a feeling that could awaken and stir the heart. While Ariel was inhaling the aroma, Reyna brought her some cake. But suddenly, after Reyna placed the perfume on the table, she smelled a pleasant fragrance. Ariel asked her what she thought of the scent, and Reyna asked where it came from. Reyna told her it was a masterpiece, and Ariel would soon make a fortune from it. To this, Ariel explained that because the ingredients were so rare, it couldn't be bought at all, so they couldn't mass-produce this perfume. But then, the maid started saying that Miss looked especially beautiful today. The long-awaited dinner ball began. It was held in honor of Saint Catherine, the patron saint of all lovers. But suddenly, Ariel felt like she shouldn't have come. It was awkward, especially when Charlotte noticed her and waved. Ariel thanked Lady Charlotte for the invitation, and the latter replied that she was always happy to have Ariel visit. Today, Charlotte also noticed that Ariel looked particularly beautiful. She looked refreshed and charming, as if she had a good night's sleep and was full of energy despite her busy schedule. The blonde lady asked Ariel if she was wearing a new perfume, and Ariel replied that it seemed the scent had seeped into her skin while she was mixing the ingredients. The noble lady noted that it was indeed a wonderful and warm scent. Ariel seemed to have charmed those around her, as they kept saying nice things to her. One girl even asked if the perfume was for sale, and Ariel replied that it wasn't yet. Another girl even mentioned that the scent's effect made her heart race. But to avoid the awkwardness, Ariel suddenly decided to leave the ball. She concluded that people's reactions to her today were different than usual. Suddenly, the customer who had inquired about the perfume found her. Ariel immediately took a perfume bottle out of a box. This bottle of love potion was packaged in a heart-shaped container, tied with a black ribbon at the end. After looking at it, the lady said they were really cute. The scent was like flowers, sweet as honey. She understood immediately. The fragrance was truly captivating, filled with love. However, there was one condition. For the effect to work, the other person had to already be interested in her. Cleo said that there might still be a chance. After Ariel wished her good luck and left, Cleo shouted after her, saying she would never forget this help. Mustering her courage, Cleo sprayed herself with the potion and decided to approach him. But suddenly, her beloved found her first, approaching from behind and telling her he had been looking everywhere for her. At the ball, a couple danced in each other's arms. It seemed the plan was going very well. Meanwhile, Ariel stood to the side with a smile on her face, as if she were responsible for it all. Despite being very tired, Ariel had gained some valuable experience. But suddenly, a rough voice called out. Cedric walked towards Ariel. He'd been looking for her all night. He claimed that the scent on Ariel had changed significantly. Cedric explained that he didn't recognize this scent, and if Charlotte hadn't told him, he would have thought Ariel had left. Ariel was surprised that he would even check if she was there. By her scent, she immediately imagined him as a dog, realizing his nose was as keen as a dog's. Then, Cedric inquired if there had been any changes in Ariel's emotional state. People said that if someone changed their perfume, it meant they were going through some changes. Ariel explained that she had simply developed a new perfume for a commission. The Duke mentioned that he had come at Charlotte's request. It was a deal, actually. His presence added extra flair. No wonder with a Duke present, the party was elevated to another level. Cedric extended his hand, inviting Ariel to dance. Ariel replied that she had barely slept. She mentioned that wasn't so important because what truly mattered was whether his recent symptoms had become more frequent. He was drinking more, and considering his strange state, Cedric's madness was intensifying, just as it did in the original story. These thoughts made Ariel feel sorry for him. Cedric suddenly asked Ariel why she was looking at him like that. Ariel said she felt she needed to treat his grace better. Since Cedric was the main character, Ariel would try her best. For others, perfume was a matter of personal preference, but for the Duke, it was a necessity of life. Cedric smiled and said he thought Ariel was showing interest in him. He tried again to invite her to dance. Ariel took his hand and agreed to just one dance. The perfumer noticed that Cedric was in an unusually good mood today. The Duke mentioned that today was a special day for him. As Ariel caught his strange look, Cedric grinned. She wondered if perhaps the perfume had affected him, but quickly dismissed the thought, as the perfume couldn't possibly really affect a man like that. Ariel was a terrible dancer. She stepped on the Duke's feet several times. Cedric told her not to worry. He said she just needed to focus on him. They began to dance again, exchanging deep glances. Suddenly, Ariel pushed him away, saying it was too hot. She didn't understand why her heart was beating so fast. The Duke's advisor approached him, saying a baron was waiting for him. Cedric turned to Ariel and said he had to leave. Staying any longer would make the atmosphere strange, so Ariel left as well. She tried to figure out why the Duke had suddenly acted that way. But suddenly, His Highness the Prince himself appeared at the ball, and everyone began to murmur. However, the prince's gaze, inexplicably, fell upon the perfumer. Ariel bowed and told him she hadn't expected to see him here. He replied that he was surprised by her talent, as she had managed to tie her predecessor and his own business together. She just laughed and said it seemed His Highness was afraid of her. She claimed they not only copied her perfume, but even bribed the flower shop sellers. But that wasn't enough. Everyone in the hall began whispering and gossiping as soon as they heard this. Then, the prince demanded she show proof that he was responsible, as Ariel was clearly talking nonsense. The girl became indignant, saying that if he wanted a competition, they should have a fair one. The perfumer looked away, asking to leave, as His Highness clearly had nothing more to say. But suddenly, Magnus and Fanti proposed a fair contest of skill with the shop's chief perfumer. Ariel didn't want to waste so much energy on them, but they kept provoking her. The pair put forward a condition. If they lost, they would close their perfume shop, but if they won, Ariel would have to become his exclusive perfumer. Ariel asked what kind of competition they would choose. Fanny replied that it would naturally be perfume making, but with one condition. Both ladies had to create a fragrance suitable for her investor. Ariel tried to analyze the request, realizing it would be difficult since her investor wasn't present. But suddenly, he emerged from the crowd, looking at the girl with confidence in her victory. Everyone crowded around the contestants, some not even understanding what was happening. Everyone knew that Winston's shop, although small, was famous. They prepared equal amounts of materials. The side with the most votes would win. Ariel pondered what scent would suit Cedric best. Because in the original story, he seemed like a terrible tyrant to her, but she sincerely believed he was a good person. Sometimes she just couldn't understand what he was thinking. The girl made up her mind. She had to win this competition. A girl began to worry that Ariel's opponents were well prepared, while Miss Winston was at a disadvantage. But the Duke replied that he had full confidence in Miss Winston's abilities. Suddenly, Ariel noticed a sticker on Fanny's perfume, realizing that theirs was pre-made. She looked at her own perfume, wondering if they might have mixed something strange into it. Considering all their childish behavior, she couldn't let them off easily. The girl decided that now was the perfect opportunity to teach them a lesson. Ariel raised her hand, indicating she was finished. When she was allowed to present her perfume first, she walked towards her investor. She handed him the perfume, asking him to try it. The perfume was called Duke of the Moonlight Night. Ariel used black orchids to create a deep and captivating scent. Over time, a barely perceptible, warm, and sweet base note would remain on the skin. This perfume would add a unique charm. Everyone inhaled her perfume, realizing the scent was melancholic yet warm, noble, and captivating, just like the Duke himself. Ariel also mentioned that this perfume could be used by anyone, regardless of gender. Fanti suddenly spoke up, saying that hot days were coming, and she wondered if such a perfume would be too heavy, especially for the approaching summer. She had prepared a refreshing grapefruit scent. It was called Prince of the Court, as everyone could feel the natural freshness of lemon and the sweetness of grapefruit. Everyone agreed that the scent was very fresh and natural, invigorating. Some even mentioned that because it was a citrus scent, it was perfect for summer. At this point, Fanny laughed loudly and said that Ariel had just called this scent cheap and outdated. She also began to advertise her own shop, saying that these perfumes could be bought at low prices. Duke of the Moonlight Night was more elegant and captivating, but for everyday use, the grapefruit scent was more suitable. People began to compare the two scents, try to choose the best one. Seeing this, someone suggested dividing into two groups to see how many votes each perfume could get. He walked towards the crowd, telling them to do so, either stand on Ariel's side or Fanny's side. But suddenly, the blonde man started sneezing, interrupting his own monologue. He mentioned that he forgot to say he was allergic to grapefruit. Fanny started screaming because her investor had only just told her this, and the man realized he was about to be sick. Fanny's investor, nauseated by the allergy, headed for the restroom. People began to murmur that the lady didn't even know about her investor's allergy. Some even reconsidered their opinion of her perfume, while Fanny swore to herself that she would never trust her investor again. The girl turned to the lady and shouted that she would get her revenge, that they would see who the best perfumer was. At that moment, Ariel hadn't expected to win the competition in such a ridiculous way, but her thoughts were interrupted by potential customers asking when the perfume would go on sale. Ariel announced that they would be able to buy it as early as next week, and she would personally distribute samples to everyone present today. Cedric approached the perfumer, thanking her for creating a perfume specifically for him. Suddenly, the Duke wondered what kind of person Miss Winston saw him as. The investor congratulated the lady on her victory and gave her a sweet smile in support of Ariel. A week later, the girl continued to sell her products, constantly learning and improving. Lena mentioned that since Ariel's attendance at the ball, they'd noticed a significant increase in male customers. Ariel responded that in the future, it would be best to create more unisex fragrances and that the design of the perfume bottles was also very important. They also saw that their competitors had indeed kept their promise and closed their shops. Lena handed her a newspaper, which reported on an impromptu perfume competition held at the St. Catherine's Day evening party, where she had created a fragrance for her ex, Duke Cedric. The report also mentioned that the competition revealed the fifth prince's grapefruit allergy. Ariel said these things bothered her, but somehow, along with a sigh of relief, she also felt a tinge of sadness. Suddenly, Ariel, reading the newspaper, caught the attention of the crowd, who recognized her as the creator of the miraculous perfume. They began shouting that Ms. Winston must visit their shops during today's festivities. The girls were swamped with papers and newspapers filled with invitations, and Ariel didn't even realize what had just happened. It was a big day, and the streets were crowded. Lena reported that today was the early summer festival. Ariel pondered, trying to recall how this festival was celebrated in the original story. To celebrate the beginning of summer, there would be a grand celebration in the streets. At the same time, this day also marked the first day of the protagonist's tyranny. But Ariel, thinking that event was still 3 years away, calmed herself down. Lena, intrigued, asked if Ariel was interested in such things, making the perfumer realize that Lena was at the age where she would be curious about the festival, so she let the maid go. Ariel announced that there probably wouldn't be many visitors today, so she could manage on her own. However, the maids began persuading Ariel to go with them, mentioning a famous tarot cafe. They could go there and have a look. Lena was almost in tears at the thought of leaving her mistress alone to enjoy herself. The festival was very beautiful, full of children and parents trying to make them happy. The maid decided to act like a child as well, asking Ariel to buy her a balloon. They went to the cafe, where the famous fortune teller, whom Lena liked very much, was sitting. But suddenly, they were bluntly informed that the cafe was closed. To this, Ariel tried to say that she could pay extra. The fortune teller immediately recognized Ms. Winston standing before her. She expressed her great fondness for the perfume she had previously purchased and offered to make an exception and serve them for free. Lena went first, wanting to know her love fortune, so the fortune teller laid out the tarot cards. She revealed that Lena's love was much closer than she imagined. She revealed the lover's card, as well as a journey card, symbolizing embarking on an adventurous journey. Ariel quickly concluded that the maid's behavior was appropriate for her age. The fortune teller turned to Ariel, offering to read her fortune. The young fortune teller began to persuade Ariel, saying her predictions were very accurate, even matching events from her childhood. The perfumer felt overwhelmed when the fortune teller mentioned that she didn't charge, that it was simply her sincere wish. But then she drew the death card. The fortune teller had her draw another. All three cards foretold hell and a painful death. Ariel gave a nervous laugh, realizing all the cards symbolized death. Even though they had not yet met, death was already her destiny. The fortune teller said it wasn't very reassuring, but wasn't sure he was dead. Even if her lover was still alive, he was only barely clinging to life. Ariel requested a prediction for her luck today. Today, in a crowded place, she should head towards where there is more of the color red, where she might meet a nobleman. Perhaps that was her destined fate. This person had a strong aura, and they would meet by chance. The knight also tried to comfort the lady, saying that medical advancements were rapid and her future lover would soon recover. Lena, on the other hand, bluntly declared that Ms. Winston was busy enough and didn't need to meet such a person to complicate her life further. First, they ran into Raphael. He approached Ms. Ariel and greeted her. But she suddenly noticed that, in the crowded streets, he was wearing red clothes. She asked him if he was sick. Ariel concluded that he was too young and healthy to be her destined lover. The man suddenly said that she looked beautiful at the last ball and that he really liked her perfume. Ariel said Raphael was exaggerating. To this, the young man asked if the lady planned to stay a while longer and if he could be responsible for her safety. Ariel mentioned that she already had bodyguards, but Raphael suggested not as a guard, but as company. Raphael claimed he could be a great guide for them, as he knew every corner of the street. They wanted to play the game of throwing darts at balloons to win prizes. Ariel was very good at this game, as she had a perfect aim. When it was the knight's turn, Ariel told him that he couldn't beat her record. He held a dart between each finger, taking a fighting stance. In an instant, he won, popping every balloon. The knight said that he just practiced a lot and never received formal training. Ariel started praising Erna, which made Raphael both angry and jealous. Raphael tried to get her attention by saying that there were delicious cheese and chicken skewers around the corner and suggested they go check them out. Lena also liked chicken skewers, so Ariel thought it was a great opportunity. But she suddenly realized that Lena wasn't by her side. Meanwhile, the girl was in the forest, trying to retrieve her ball that was stuck in a tree. Suddenly, someone handed her a rope, which startled her. Standing before her was a man wearing a hood, with red bags under his eyes and an empty gaze. Meanwhile, the men decided to split up and look for her, as she couldn't have gone far. Ariel thanked everyone and asked them to meet back at this spot in an hour. The girls started calling out Lena's name loudly, looking for her everywhere at the festival. But then, her gaze landed on a blonde man eating noodles. She was about to ask him why he was dressed so strangely, but he covered her mouth with his hand. He grabbed her tightly and took her to a corner. But Ariel wasn't one to give up easily, so she bit the prince's hand. He yelled, saying that His Highness was supposed to stay in the castle. Then he explained that because of her, his mother had forbidden him from leaving the royal palace, and he had snuck out. He told her to pretend she hadn't seen him at all. The girl said that this was a waste of time, and she had to leave. But he wouldn't let her go. She turned to him and asked what more he wanted. But the prince asked if she had come to the festival alone. He said he wasn't used to commoner villages and needed a guide. To this, Ariel responded that he had plenty of money and could hire anyone he wanted. The prince grabbed the lady's hand and said that wasn't the point. He mentioned that he had no one to hang out with. Then he declared that she didn't need that kind of investor and tore up the contract. The newspapers were mocking him, and he became isolated. Ariel said she was looking for someone, and if he could help, they could hang out together. The girl described Lena's appearance in detail, to which he asked if she was talking about the servant. The prince declared, mentioning his remarkable memory, that he had seen her heading towards the forest not long ago. The lady found a bracelet on the ground. It belonged to Lena. She started to think something serious might have happened. The man said there was a magic tower nearby, and no one dared to cause trouble easily. But suddenly, Ariel smelled a familiar scent. It was the perfume Lena usually wore. The girl started running, trying to find her maid, but then she tripped. The prince caught her, grabbing her around the waist. Ariel looked at him, her face flushed with embarrassment. He suddenly let go of her, saying she was too heavy. Ariel was very angry with him. She told him he should go and that she thought she could handle the search on her own. But he still followed her, saying he wanted to help. Trusting her nose, the perfumer tried to track Lena, and there she was, standing alone in the forest. As soon as she saw the lady, she ran towards her with tears in her eyes. The lady asked if she was hurt. The girl reported that she was completely fine because the Duke had saved her. Cedric stepped out from the bushes and extended his hand to the lady. He told her that the child was safe and sound and that Ariel didn't need to worry. Noticing bloodstains, the man asked if anyone was hurt. The girl thanked the Duke, as she had been really worried that something had happened to Lena. To this, the man just smiled and said it was no problem. The blonde boy wanted to get some praise, and suddenly Cedric asked him what he was doing there. He replied that Miss Ariel had tearfully begged him, and he was just helping her. He said with a smile that they were friends now. But Cedric was still angry with the blonde boy, saying he couldn't just let his misdeeds slide, and started rolling up his sleeves. To this, the other man just said that the Duke could attack, as he was issuing a challenge. Ariel stopped the fight, telling them that Lena was very scared and they could fight later. The Duke apologized for his behavior and said he would ask Erna to escort them home. The perfumer told the girl to go back to the shop and get some rest, as it was their day off anyway. And Ariel, the Duke invited her to speak privately. They had dinner together, and the perfumer asked Cedric what important matter he wanted to discuss. The man asked the lady if she would be traveling for business. He expressed his hope that she would accompany him. He suggested she accompany him somewhere. To be more precise, they needed to travel to the Holy City, located on the edge of the Beller Empire. But to get there, it would take half a month of nonstop travel on horseback. Ariel asked for his forgiveness, wondering why he needed her company on such a long journey when she could prepare him a sufficient amount of Onyxia's soul. The man said the scent alone was no longer enough, which surprised the lady, who asked if its effectiveness had weakened. Cedric explained that the scent's effect was amplified only when the girl was near him. To this, she said that there was no such condition for someone's presence regarding the scent, but the Duke, speaking from experience, said the difference in the effect when the girl was present and when she wasn't was like heaven and earth. The girl told him that she couldn't fulfill this request, as she couldn't leave the shop for so long. Moreover, the lady pointed out that Cedric's assumption that she was the key to the solution since she provided the perfume was a distorted association, and he was mistaken. So, the man asked her to forget the previous request and invited her to be his partner at the ball next month. Ariel started to ponder the reason behind this request. The Duke explained that his social circle was limited and finding a partner wasn't easy. The girl found this absurd, as someone like Cedric must be popular, and if he announced in the square that he was looking for a partner, a crowd of hopefuls would surely flock to him. The perfumer thought that appearing at the ball as his partner would definitely attract gossip, but on the other hand, it could greatly boost her perfume business, especially after the great success of her last new product. After a moment of thought, Ariel accepted the Duke's invitation. The lady returned to the shop, where Rena and Elna greeted her, saying they had been waiting for her. She asked if something serious had happened. Ariel told them they should keep a better eye on her next time, to which the maids simply apologized. The girl recalled the horrifying sight she had witnessed: blood, Cedric killing a group of knights before her eyes. At that moment, the man realized that not even Rena carried the scent of anoxia that could help him suppress his bloodlust. He was injured, but he forbade the girl to approach, as he was extremely dangerous at the time. Cedric asked Rena to keep this a secret from Lady Winston. Otherwise, she herself could be in danger. The perfumer told the girl to rest for a few days. Cedric informed Guy that the Intelligence Guild, which had disappeared 16 years ago, had returned. It seemed they were connected to the Duke's madness. The man ordered Cedric to continue the investigation. Guy mentioned that he was a top intelligence agent, so Cedric could fully trust him. The man knew that, with any luck, he could put an end to this madness once and for all. Ariel concluded that since it was summer, it would be a good idea to develop a new product that embodied the season. It was crucial that the product captured the essence of summer. Rena immediately suggested a connection to the ocean. Speaking of which, Ariel hadn't seen any entries for oceanic scents in the original diary, and it seemed difficult to find in this world. Suddenly, a man entered, claiming to be sent by Countess Gilbert. He handed her a gift containing a rare herb. Jenna decided to pass on this treasure, obtained from the guild master they traded with, to the shop and asked Ariel to make good use of it. Everyone present smelled this scent for the first time. The aroma was refreshing and invigorating, like the morning breeze, almost like a salty sea breeze caressing the tip of their noses. One could say the scent captured the romance of youth. But then, His Highness the Prince also appeared in the shop, claiming she had promised to accompany him and must keep her word. He even had a special date course planned. To make things difficult for him, the girl tried to refuse, citing her busy work schedule, which left the fellow sulking and calling her a liar. The lady proposed a compromise, specifically to make perfume together for amusement. He said that didn't sound very interesting. Irene handed the herb to the prince, claiming it needed to be ground immediately. The problem was that information on the tray herb was scarce, and it had never been used in perfumery before, so Ariel wanted to try different extraction methods. According to research, the royals of the Western countries used this herb to alleviate znoi, but its fresh, oceanic scent might have other properties, and it also possessed an unusual blue hue. The girl decided to try using this key herb as the main note. When they sprayed the perfume, a refreshing, fruity fragrance filled the air. The scent of salty sea breeze and grass, with a barely perceptible, clean, and refreshing hint of the ocean, left a soft, lingering trail. Ariel realized the secret of the Timothy grass scent was its ability to bring a perfume to life. If launched in the summer, the perfume would be a definite hit, and no one could pull it off except for Ariel. All that was left was to consider the perfume bottle and its name. Meanwhile, Vanto was fuming. She swore to leave this wretched place and become more popular and successful than anyone else. But suddenly, a cloud of bluish-purple smoke enveloped her. Vanto suddenly collapsed, unconscious. A girl entered the room, a sly smile on her face. Ariel served the girls some delicious refreshments. She announced that she had created a new perfume and invited them to try it. Suddenly, a blonde woman appeared, saying she had overheard their conversation. The woman asked when the perfume would be available for sale, as she wanted to be the first to purchase it. But Ariel said she wasn't sure of the date yet, but would definitely let her try the product on her next visit. The blonde woman shared that she had always enjoyed using her perfumes, and everyone in the salon only used hers as well. The girls noticed that Miss Ariel had become increasingly popular recently, with more and more talk about her, and a lot more visitors like the lady. Business in the shop was gradually getting busier, and at this rate, they would need to move to a bigger place. Ariel thought that the shop next door was vacant and undergoing some renovations. A man approached Ariel and handed her an envelope, saying Duke Evans had sent him to deliver this letter. Inside the envelope was an invitation to the royal ball. Ariel immediately remembered Cedric inviting her to be his partner for next month's royal ball. The girls gasped, saying it was the grandest celebration of the year, and only a select few nobles who received invitations could attend. Surprisingly, even the original story didn't mention this, so it seemed like a much bigger deal than she had anticipated. The girls asked her to tell them how fun it was after she went, as they were really curious. A group of men appeared out of nowhere, expressing that it would be their honor if Ariel would attend the ball with them. Ariel sighed and apologetically announced that she already had a partner. Ariel excitedly announced that her partner was Duke Evans. They still said that if Cedric decided not to show up, the lady could contact them anytime. The perfumer concluded that business had indeed improved, but as the saying goes, one must always dream big. The day of the royal ball arrived, and Ariel was meticulously dressed with the combined efforts of 3 people. All the servants complimented Ariel, saying she was getting prettier by the day, but she was certain Ariel Winston had threatened them to treat her well. Her father was both shocked and furious that his daughter had been invited to the royal ball. He declared that she had to be impeccable from head to toe in order to impress the royals. The maids began selecting a dress for her, but most of the clothes were outdated. Ariel began selecting jewelry, choosing a necklace with a gemstone that reminded her of Cedric's eyes. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door, informing her that Duke Evans was already waiting for her. The Duke invited the lady to ride in the carriage with him. Ariel suddenly realized that she could easily fall in love with this investor, especially with his male, lead-worthy face. Ariel began to inquire about how Evans was feeling, as she could easily be considered Cedric's doctor. She could calm his madness in a way no doctor or priest in the Empire could, and thus could boldly be called his physician. He asked her who she was if not a doctor, and the answer she gave was a perfumer. The man took the lady's arm and led her into the ballroom. Everyone immediately began gossiping about the perfect couple, saying they didn't believe their relationship was purely business. Suddenly, Cedric asked the lady if she had changed her perfume. The point was, the scent was simply mesmerizing. It captured the shimmer of crashing waves and the tranquility of the sea. The Duke was amazed that Ariel could express these emotions so beautifully through scent. The man began to tell the lady about a magical island where the beaches were pink, guessing she might like it. The Duke suggested they visit there in the summer. Finally, an elderly lady with a fan appeared at the ball. This lady was the empress of their country. It suddenly occurred to Ariel that the empress, who held the highest power in the country, was a perfect opportunity to promote her perfume. The empress thanked Evans for accepting her invitation and said she was glad to see him again after so long. The empress looked at Ariel and asked if she was his partner. The Duke introduced her, and the empress commented that it was the first time she had seen Cedric bring a partner, and made it clear that no one was allowed to enter without one. The empress suddenly noticed a very pleasant fragrance emanating from Miss Winston. She determined it smelled like a type of herb, a gift from a neighboring country. Ariel confirmed the lady's words, saying the new perfume was based on vetiver. The perfume wasn't yet on the market, but the girl had a bottle. After the queen tried it, she called it stunning, and suddenly, the air, though stifling, was filled with an invigorating sensation. Compared to vetiver, this perfume was deeper and more complex. It was sure to be a hit, especially since the queen herself had praised it. But suddenly, Her Majesty was interrupted by news that Minister Rawl requested an audience on urgent matters. She asked Duke Evans to keep her company for a moment. The nobles immediately flocked to the perfumer, begging to use the perfume. Ariel immediately realized her business had gotten off to a good start today. Just as the girl was about to lie down and rest, the fifth prince, Cain, appeared. Cain mentioned that his mother really liked the scent. Ariel smiled and said that the gentleman had helped her a little, to which he replied that even her smile was beautiful. And at that moment, the Duke appeared before them. He sternly declared that if the prince hadn't found a dance partner yet, he shouldn't be hitting on his person. To this, the blonde man said they were just chatting. The prince quickly reminded Cedric that he and Miss Winston were merely business partners. The insulted man took Ariel's hand and pulled her aside. She asked the Duke to let go of her hand, as he was holding it too tightly. Duke Evans questioned why the lady kept talking to that scoundrel. Ariel mentioned that building a relationship with him could boost her business, especially if he was from the royal family. The Duke began to probe whether she was interested in the fellow for business or if she genuinely liked him. Cedric frowned, claiming to have superior blood. She knew they were enemies, but she didn't expect it to be to this extent. The Duke declared that when trouble arose, it was best to get some fresh air. The man led the lady to the palace greenhouse. Suddenly, Ariel realized that Cedric was the blonde man's uncle. Without warning, the lady discovered a rare herb that smelled like mint and mustard. Meanwhile, she sighed, regretting not bringing the diary she needed. Cedric concluded that Ariel really liked it here. The Duke asked the lady to stay a little longer, as he wanted to spend some time with her. She agreed, commenting on the beautiful scenery. The lady mentioned she wanted to come here again, to which Duke Evans replied, anytime. The Duke had urgent matters to attend to and couldn't stay with Ariel, so he had to leave. Meanwhile, the prince concluded that, judging by how angry the Duke was at the ball, Ariel must be his weakness. He suddenly wondered why his mood had changed so quickly. At the ball, the first prince and third prince were introduced. The first prince was Louis, a handsome blonde man, while the second prince, Pierre, looked identical. Their appearance was more radiant than before. The brothers immediately picked on the blonde man, telling him he needed to go and say hello. The man didn't understand why he was here. He was supposed to be studying abroad. The other brother mentioned that the youngest of them was very sensitive. But suddenly, they revealed some very bad news, specifically a newspaper that disgraced the prince. The man told his brothers to get lost as soon as possible. Suddenly, the mother of this lovely family appeared, and everyone began to greet her. The queen asked how their journey was. The gentleman claimed that during that time, he traveled across the eastern continent and mastered various martial arts. But the mother said that as long as Cain hadn't messed things up too badly, it was fine. The youngest was told that if he didn't want to embarrass himself again, he could skip the family dinner. Ariel approached His Highness and asked why he was alone, but suddenly, the lady saw the man crying. The lady declared it was very cruel, especially since she was sure there was plenty of cake. Cain said he didn't understand why people didn't like him, looked down on him, even though he had tried so hard, but everything went wrong. Ariel told him that the prince himself had already stated the reason for his problems. The girl said it was all because everything he did was to look good in the eyes of others. The perfumer said that if he wanted things to get better, he needed to act for himself and do what he enjoyed. The prince suddenly realized that even after he had done all these things, she still hadn't started to hate him. Then Cain declared that he liked Miss Winston, but they were unaware that they were being photographed from a corner. Soon, these photos began appearing in the newspapers, and Cedric saw these photos early in the morning. Rena handed the newspaper with the photos to her mistress. 1 month later, a new shop called Magnus opened next to Ariel's. The man running it was attracting customers, saying that to celebrate the opening, all items were a quarter of the price. Everyone realized this was much cheaper than Ariel's perfumes, and it seemed Magnus was determined. Winston's shop still had no customers, so Ariel suggested that Rena take a break. To this, she claimed it was only temporary, and in a few minutes, customers would flock in. Even if someone did stop by, upon hearing the quarter price, they immediately turned to the other salon. Strangely, Cain stopped sponsoring, and she clearly closed the shop, making it impossible to reopen. It was likely that Vanto had found a new, more successful investor. Ariel asked Eileen for a favor. The lady compared the scents again and found that Vanto's perfume was a complete copy of hers. The girl thought that if they continued to sell similar perfumes at such outrageous prices, they might even go bankrupt. Suddenly, Magnus himself walked into the shop, mentioning how small their space was. Ariel declared that Vanto couldn't profit from plagiarism forever. She added that she didn't know which investor the girl had found this time, but she would be humiliated again. To this, the lady claimed that this time, she would crush Ariel completely. Looking at the documents, Red said they no longer needed to worry about fund management. He asked how they should deal with Evans, as he seemed to have started investigating. The boss said that rather than acting rashly, it would be better to attack his weaknesses. The protagonist agreed, saying she was waiting for his orders. Ariel headed to the trade guild. The girl thought that perhaps Madame Jenna could help her. The lady smiled and asked what wind had blown Lady Winston there. She declared that she had found an excellent use for tray grass and brought a perfume as a gift. Jenna had heard many rumors about them, but never thought she would experience them herself. The lady needed those perfumes for their efficacy, saying she could get tray grass anytime she asked. The guild master thought that if Ariel came before lunch, it must be something urgent. The lady got straight to the point, as she heard the guild was planning to visit the Monarch Kingdom, and she needed a unique item from Shira. The girl desperately needed iris dye. Although this dye produced stunning colors, it was very expensive in the Empire due to its limited supply. Ariel gave the exact amount needed. Jenna was surprised to hear the lady needed 50 million units and asked if she needed Jenna to invest personally. The lady declared she would ensure all 50 million units were sold out. To this, Jenna said it was too sudden. The perfumer explained that she planned to win the Spring Festival, which would determine the trendy color of the year. If she won, she would become the May Queen, and interest in iris dye would surge. She also said she would take full responsibility. The lady declared that although Ariel was young, she was very thoughtful. Even the butler said it wouldn't lead to a greater loss, as if the guest's plan failed, they could always sell the rest, all over the continent. But there was one problem. To get that iris, you needed to cross a bridge, or you would have to bypass the Monarch Kingdom. It was heavily guarded, so a pass had to be applied for in advance. The butler mentioned that usually, with a little extra money, they would approve it even if the deadline was missed. But since the city lord changed, things had become much more difficult. It turned out Cedric Evans was the new city lord. It wasn't that he didn't accept bribes, but it was just difficult to contact him. Ariel said she would handle it personally. Come to think of it, from that moment on, she hadn't even had a chance to meet him in person, only continuously sending Soul of Anisha, nothing more. Ariel immediately realized it was because of that unsavory article about her and the Fifth Prince. The lady decided it was necessary to talk to him and stopped to let Lena at least buy a gift. When Winston arrived, all the servants immediately bowed in unison and greeted her. The shopkeeper promised to provide the lady with top-notch service, so she chose a gorgeous red-toned outfit. The man said that all the clothes suited the lady, and he believed Duke Evans would like them too. But then, the perfumer remembered she was there to pick out a gift for Mr. Evans and explained her purpose. However, he started working without even asking who the gift was for, while the lady thought how good the customer treatment was here. He offered her several options, asking what she preferred, but she realized such jewelry wasn't symbolic enough as a gift, and these scoundrels were just trying to squeeze every penny out of her. Ariel smiled politely and told them it wasn't what she was looking for. The shopkeeper apologized and asked what she was interested in, promising not to disappoint her again. However, when Ariel named what she was looking for, the clerk was taken aback. It was a basket of fruit. Changing her mind, the perfumer then asked for a bottle of wine. They brought her a booklet with various wines, but she chose the cheapest one. Ariel noticed a single item displayed separately from the other merchandise. As she approached, she saw it was a necklace, displayed alone due to its expensive price. She immediately realized that wearing it to the Spring Festival would create a wonderful harmony. But her excitement was quickly extinguished when they told her the item wasn't for sale, only for display. When she asked when the exhibition would end, they said there was no set date, but they could put her on a pre-order list. She wondered if the exhibition would end before the Spring Festival, as it was so beautiful, and Ariel desperately wanted it. To this, Ernest replied that it was one of the owner's middle names. The full name, it turned out, was Cedric Rhett Evans. Had Ariel known earlier, she would never have bought the Duke a gift here. The girl even understood why Cedric's name kept popping up. When Ariel arrived at the Duke's mansion, his advisor awkwardly asked her to wait a little longer. The lady was starting to think the man had no time for her at all when, suddenly, he came out to greet her himself. She wanted to apologize for the unexpected visit, but then she noticed the Duke kept seeking physical contact. There was a pillow mark on his cheek, and she realized she had interrupted his nap. The man asked her what she needed and mentioned she had never proactively requested meeting. She replied that she needed help and mentioned hearing that His Grace managed a fortress city. To make her case more convincing, she recited Cedric's full name and requested passage for the trade guild across the bridge. The Duke was confused, thinking Ariel wanted to export perfume to Saru. But the lady explained that she urgently needed to procure some items this month, and the merchant said they would return empty-handed without a bridge pass. If he could approve it, it would greatly help her business and also improve the current economic downturn. Ariel, being very stubborn, decided to solve the deficit problem herself. The man claimed he was confident in the grandeur of this plan and would arrange for the trade guild to be included in the list of merchants allowed entry this month. The lady thanked the investor and said she would submit a detailed report on the results of her brilliant plan. Suddenly, Cedric asked if she had considered marriage, which startled Ariel. She asked why he brought that up, and he replied that he saw in the newspaper that she was dating Prince Bell and intended to marry him. Ariel explained that it was just a ridiculous rumor. The prince had only confessed his feelings to her unilaterally. Hearing this, the man became enraged, calling the prince a damn brat. Regardless, Evans admitted he was genuinely glad it was just a baseless rumor. Evans mentioned again that he had been suffering from headaches and fever until Miss Winston arrived, but now, whenever she was near him, he felt no pain. To this, Ariel said he was talking nonsense. She stood up from a sofa, leaned over the investor, and checked his temperature with her hand. Looking away, she said Cedric still had a fever. The man grabbed her hand and pulled her closer to him. The lady looked at him, about to say something, but was interrupted by the advisor's laughter. Ariel pushed the man away and handed him a gift. Afterward, filled with embarrassment and confusion, she quickly left the room. Meanwhile, the fifth prince was eagerly painting Miss Ariel's portrait on a canvas, muttering about how much he missed her. His draft, with its clean lines, was indeed beautiful. Cain even started crying, realizing he shouldn't have confessed to Ariel. His sister saw this and thought to herself that she would never forgive Ariel for making him look even more foolish. A new scent filled Ariel's room, and Reyna finally smelled the iris. It was the first time Reyna had experienced such a refined fragrance. She proudly declared that Miss would surely win at the spring festival. The maid handed her a small suitcase, saying a delivery had arrived, but Ariel hadn't ordered anything. Upon opening it, the perfumer was shocked to discover that it was the necklace. From the handwriting on the attached note, Ariel realized it was from Cedric. The girls discussed how it would be a new face this time, not Charlotte. But suddenly, they saw Ariel Winston, the one labeled the ill-tempered girl, arrive at the festival. Due to the lady's magnificent appearance, all the girls expressed their delight at seeing her. The perfumer exuded an unusual floral fragrance. The girl kindly invited the nobles to try her new perfume, made from irises and emitting an elegant fragrance that subtly highlighted the wearer's noble charm. Everyone loved the new perfume, and the ladies, of course, began inquiring where and how they could acquire this latest fragrance. Suddenly, Princess Rena appeared at the ball. The princess began by saying that one could see the recklessness of a novice, or rather, her audacity, at a glance. The princess promptly declared that Ariel could not possibly be the May Queen, as the color of her dress was far too expensive to be considered fashionable. The perfumer bowed, thanking the blonde lady for her instruction, admitting that the princess was indeed as generous as she had heard. Ariel announced she had heard exclusive news that the Trade Guild had visited Sela Port, known for its unique goods. She reported that the guild would soon announce their bulk purchase of iris flower dye, as few merchants dared to bring irises from afar. This violet blue color used to be incredibly expensive. Ariel explained that the high price was not due to the rarity of irises, but rather supply chain issues. The princess was taken aback, as the large shipment was so sudden. Ariel explained they brought a large quantity of the dye, so she decided to wear purple from head to toe. The nobles immediately realized that if Countess Gilbert herself said so, then the supply must be plentiful. The princess promptly declared the countess utterly foolish, as the violet blue color symbolized death. Hearing this, Ariel blinked in surprise, saying that in the language of flowers, the iris symbolized good luck. She chuckled, saying it was a curious world of flowers, where a bloom, symbolizing good fortune, also carried such a contradictory meaning. But the princess wasn't about to let it go, smiling as she reminded Ariel of the rumors regarding her friendship with her brother. Ariel sighed, consoling herself that some rumors could actually be helpful for publicity. The perfumer announced she had met His Highness the Prince a few times, but their relationship wasn't as the newspapers portrayed it. Princess Rena abruptly warned Ariel to be much more careful, as the royal family was too high for her. As soon as Her Highness left, everyone began praising the color of Ariel's dress and requesting to try some more of her perfume. Suddenly, another girl appeared in the ballroom, also requesting to try some of the perfume. Ariel immediately remembered that this woman was the true female protagonist of the original story, named Lena. She was shocked, as it was still a long time before the main characters were supposed to appear, and there was no mention of her attending the spring celebration in the original story. Lena smiled, complimenting the perfumer, calling her a genius. She began socializing with everyone, while Winston, Ariel, couldn't figure out why she had appeared so early. Ariel said she needed to excuse herself, wishing everyone a good evening, and left the hall. She wanted some time alone to gather her thoughts, as according to the plot, Lena should be connected to Cedric, the male protagonist. She knew she and the Duke were close due to business, but they were destined to part ways one day. Winston, Ariel, couldn't understand why her mood suddenly plummeted. The villain's thoughts were interrupted by the female protagonist, who asked Ariel why she was alone. Ariel explained that she decided to take a break. Lena walked over, saying the voting had begun and suggested they go together. The perfumer firmly believed she shouldn't be bothered by this right now and needed to focus on winning. The voting began, and Ariel Winston was the first candidate. The second candidate was Lady Vimbel. The host announced that, sticking to the theme of irises, Lady Ariel presented a remarkable and stunning outfit. The audience claimed that Lady Winston seemed to possess a unique charm that even surpassed the contestants of previous years. As for Lady Vimbel, she caught the attention of other contestants with a rare, pure beauty within the Empire. Lena stated it was a great honor to be a competitor alongside the perfumer. A noble approached Ariel, mentioning that Lady Winston must be upset that men weren't allowed, preventing her from bringing the Duke as her partner. Ariel forced a smile, saying that if the Duke were here, he would rig the votes to ensure her victory. She laughed, saying she pitted the Duke for being born a man. A competitor approached the perfumer, telling her to ignore those people, attributing their behavior to anxiety. Ariel was practically praying, as she wanted to become the May Queen to defeat Magnus. As it turned out, the first two votes went to Lena. The girls tried to comfort Lady Winston as she hadn't received any votes, but it turned out that Ariel's votes were piled up at the bottom, and there were quite a few. And so, Ms. Ariel Winston won by a landslide. She accepted a bouquet of flowers, and a crown was placed on her head. Eileen, seeing Ms. Winston, immediately understood she had succeeded. The girl realized it was time to discuss the contract directly. From that day on, everyone started wearing this unusual color, as it was declared fashionable. People kept asking why the perfume hadn't been sold before, and Ariel replied that it was made from a very rare flower, and luckily, she had managed to acquire a large batch. News of Ms. Winston becoming the May Queen quickly spread throughout the Empire, and all the newspapers began to buzz about the event. As a result, the demand for iris dye soared, and they made a handsome profit. Everyone clearly saw that Ariel's move had truly humiliated Magnus. To congratulate Winston, the Duke brought the lady a cake, expressing his admiration. The girl also noticed that the necklace Cedric had given her perfectly complemented her outfit. The man simply smiled and, using the excuse that they hadn't seen each other in a while, quickly invited Winston to dinner. But the lady refused, saying she was too busy today. Then the fifth prince suddenly appeared and also asked her to dinner. His Highness declared that he felt Ariel was destined to be the May Queen. He mentioned that they hadn't seen each other in a while and hoped to spend some time alone with her. But Evans immediately grabbed the other man's hand, claiming he was talking nonsense and needed to sober up. Cain suddenly said that he hadn't come for no reason, but had a serious matter to discuss. The man said he wanted Ariel to become Mr. Cain's exclusive perfumer. He explained that he had acted foolishly last time and hadn't recognized the jewel before him. Evans quickly interrupted the prince, declaring that Winston was already his exclusive perfumer and he wouldn't allow him to take her away. Meanwhile, Rena noticed that Finta had copied their perfume again. Even the people understood, murmuring that they were selling cheap imitations here, while Ms. Ariel's shop was much better. Hearing this, Magnus was dealt a heavy blow, her heart filled with anger and despair. The girl mocked her because the lady didn't have a single customer left. She asked if she needed help again. The girl handed her a bewitching incense that could help Magnus regain her popularity. With it, people flooded the entrance of Finta's shop like a tide. They pushed and shoved like zombies, almost shattering the glass and breaking down the door. Ariel had prepared a large batch of goods and was waiting for customers. The girl thought to herself that business had been even better since she became the May Queen. At this rate, they might need to expand the shop. She even thought it would be a good idea to open a second branch and start exporting abroad. Rena, Eileen, and Ariel went outside and saw people acting strangely, as if hypnotized, all heading towards Magnus' shop. They decided to wait and see what was going on. Rena noticed that the people looked like they were under some kind of spell. Ariel told Rena to watch the shop while she went in to see what was happening. Everyone inside the shop was going crazy, holding bottles and laughing hysterically. Seeing this scene, Winston was terrified. It wasn't just strange, it was downright creepy. Shockingly, not only the customers, but even Magnus herself was delirious. The perfumer realized that if she wasn't acting alone, then someone might be helping her. Suddenly, the fifth prince, Cain, walked into the shop himself. The man announced that he had received a report suspecting the use of prohibited herbs within the empire. The man ordered them to set up a magic barrier and bring a priest for healing. He walked towards one of the ladies, extended his hand imbued with holy light, and brought her back to her senses. At this point, Ariel asked what had happened. The prince revealed that the royal family possessed divine power, and he was no exception. The man quickly realized this wasn't enough, as the effects of the bewitching incense were too strong. It was a chemical substance made from poisonous herbs containing narcotic ingredients. The prince pondered, as that herb was forbidden in the empire. Ariel shared her thoughts, believing that Magnus hadn't done this alone, as she herself had been affected by the drug. Winston said that, out of curiosity, she could try to help for a minute. At the prince's request, Ms. Ariel concocted an antidote to treat various addictions. The girl asked the man if he suspected anyone of being the mastermind. Cain said he had a good guess who it was, as something similar had happened 16 years ago. That day, money laundering and smuggling operations were successfully completed. The girl declared that Magnus had played her part, and she and Bella could handle the rest. The man ordered the girl to approach Ms. Winston carefully. He also made it clear that only she could bring this place back to life. After entering the strange Finna store again, the girl began to spray the antidote. This apparently worked, and people gradually regained consciousness, completely bewildered. Ariel approached Magnus and started spraying the perfume on her as well. After bringing her back to her senses, she started asking the woman if she remembered anything. Magnus said that before Bella left, she had last stopped by her shop, but then suddenly a strange smoke appeared and she collapsed. Ariel suggested she rest, saying it was a good thing they were able to bring her back to normal. The prince said that, as an old friend, he would put in a good word for Magnus with the royal family, as she might be blamed for everything that happened. The woman thanked them and sincerely apologized for everything she had done. She also told them that in the future, no matter what, she would help them if she could. Winston said that this matter couldn't be settled in just 1 or 2 attempts. The investigation revealed that Magnus' beauty shop was being used for money laundering. The perfumer asked if the Empire had completely eradicated the fraud guild, but few knew that the guild leader had survived and escaped. It has been 16 years since they were expelled, and it seems that they have been biding their time and rebuilding their strength all these years. They have also established a new base, and the royal family is currently busy searching for them. This is the only typical villain group that appears in the original story, the final big villain. They are, as you might expect, ruthless and also involved in the kidnapping of Duke Evans' heir. The heir from 16 years ago. Cedric was just a disposable tool in an experiment hybridizing monsters with demonic entities, and the side effect was Cedric went mad. Originally, Cain was supposed to appear 2 years later, but due to various circumstances, the plot has deviated from the original. Ariel concluded that since Cain shouldn't have appeared so soon, Cedric was in danger. The girl stood up and said she had to go. She explained that she needed to go somewhere urgently, and upon hearing this, the man grabbed her hand and said it was dangerous outside and that he would accompany her. To this, Winston stated that the person he needed to protect wasn't her, and she wasn't a little girl who couldn't go anywhere alone. The prince said that the lady must be going to see the Duke, and she didn't understand what that had to do with him. The guy declared that now he was absolutely certain Mr. Evans was the lady's type. To this, the girl replied that it wasn't like that at all. The man laughed, pointing at her reddened ears, and said she was lying. Afterwards, Ariel rudely shook off his hand, saying she really had to go. The girl went to the Duke and asked if Cedric was inside. The man was curious as to why Ms. Winston was visiting at this hour, but Ariel was preoccupied, trying to assess Cedric's condition through observation. The perfumer glanced at the investor and requested a private conversation. Ariel said that although it was late, this conversation was very important. She asked the Duke if he had heard about the return of the Counterintelligence Guild. To this, the man sternly asked where she got such information. But the girl quickly realized that if he found out that Cain had told her, he would be furious. Ariel said that the organization was notorious. The girl understood that of all the things Cedric had endured, the Fraud Guild's crimes were the most cruel. The incident not only drove him mad, but also brought the pain and fear of being kidnapped as a child. In the original story, when those swindlers returned, Cedric was consumed by rage and went mad. Evans asked what had the lady so deep in thought. She said everything was fine, but in her heart, she thought that maybe things were okay now, but Cedric's madness might worsen over time. She realized he needed her, the one who could cure his madness. The girl who was supposed to be with Evans turned out to be Lena. The lady realized that the female lead's existence was crucial to Cedric himself. The man asked if the lady had anything to say to him. Ariel declared that she was now his family doctor, and he needed to report any minor details concerning his health to his family doctor. Winston asked if he had experienced any accelerated pulse lately. Seeing Ariel sincerely asking like his attending physician, Cedric couldn't help but smile a little. Evans said he felt the same as usual, but he didn't miss the opportunity to point out that the girl was concerned about him. The perfumer was perpetually haunted by the thought that one day he would naturally encounter the female lead. Ariel was tormented by only one question. Could she stay by his side until then? Cedric offered to escort the lady to the shop's entrance, but she declined, saying her shop was just around the corner. He pondered how the Fraud Guild had settled into the sewers, their establishment of a base there indicating they were preparing to resume activities in the Imperial capital. Evans inquired whether there had been any findings regarding the case from 16 years ago. The Duke concluded that they had lived up to their reputation, causing quite a bit of trouble. Think about those human experiments, he said. These experiments are the very root of this madness. During the fusion with the demon, the blessings of baptism had also become ineffective, all because even divine power couldn't heal Cedric. A subordinate mentioned that these were all just speculations, but there was other intel. Ariel Winston turned out to be a successful experimental subject. If she was also a test subject, then everything makes sense. The man realized her abilities likely stemmed from that experiment. They were after her for a good reason. Suddenly, Cedric's old illness relapsed, and he began to struggle for breath. He collapsed onto the floor, his consciousness fading. He began to recall being locked in a cage with Ariel. But the moment Evans thought of the perfumer, the pain subsided. It was likely because she was like a soothing aroma that alleviated his suffocation. Winston's perfume shop suddenly began construction. People were surprised to find out that the shop would be closed for the next 3 months. Winston herself explained that she planned to return with a larger shop and asked for everyone's patience. Surprisingly, a year had passed since the shop first opened. The lady came to the Duke's mansion, saying she would be staying there for a while during the shop's renovations. The maids began talking about Ariel and how she had recently become the May Queen. They all said her perfume was incredibly popular now. Suddenly, Ariel's father barged in, greeting his daughter, saying it had been a while since they last saw each other. He asked how the royal ball went. She replied that the Empress had taken a great liking to her perfume, unlike others. She also shared the news of her victory at the Spring Festival, saying it was difficult to handle the influx of customers. After all, the esteemed Duke Evans invested additional funds into her salon, her father said. He said he was tired of hearing about his daughter winning the May Queen title. The father expressed that his daughter was truly extraordinary, and he was very proud of her. The girl sat in her room, contemplating how to deal with the Fraud Guild, because heaven knows if they would do something similar again, it was best to be prepared. Ariel concluded that in the current situation, she needed to protect Cedric. However, the lady didn't know when they would meet again. The protagonist, the perfumer, brainstormed and attempted to create various antidotes based on the information about the Fraud Guild from the original story. In the process of carrying out these plans, the girl faced countless failures, with explosions and accidents occurring on the workbench. Where her concoction exploded again, Winston realized it was a complete failure. She had thought she could manage without any divine power. believing that perfect chemical knowledge was the key. Ariel treated Cain with various desserts, which was obvious, as it was the only way she could get him to work. Suddenly, the girls started asking the boy about his divine power. He explained that his brothers were busy, so he had to handle it himself. The lady thanked the boy for coming to help, because without him, nothing could be solved. The boy also hurriedly apologized for confessing his feelings to her before. He said he had acted badly out of jealousy afterward, and he was very ashamed of it. But the girl had a big favor to ask the prince regarding the bewitching incense. She knew it was the fraud guild's handiwork, and she wanted to be prepared for any contingencies. For that, Ariel needed his divine power. Cain reported that the royal palace was also worried about the worst-case scenario, and he would do his best to help within his capabilities. The girl smiled and said that she would contact him soon then. But the prince stopped her again, saying he would help her if she could make him a perfume. Her father was bewildered when he saw His Highness the Prince at his residence. The prince explained that he decided to come because Lady Winston was going to make him a perfume as a return favor. The old man tried to hold the prince's hand, saying his daughter was the best and most outstanding perfumer. The friends headed towards the laboratory, while her father was ecstatic that his daughter was finally getting close to the royal family. Ariel said that first, they needed to determine the overall concept of the perfume Cain liked, but the fifth prince was contemplating how to get closer to the young lady. After all, he was currently in the place where she spent most of her time, implying that she considered him someone close. Miss Winston asked him if he had a preferred fragrance. He leaned in again, declaring that his favorite scent was Miss Ariel's. However, this was merely his wishful thinking. Ariel suggested he try a few perfumes to choose from. As expected, the blonde man had a clear preference. Meanwhile, the girl asked him what image he hoped to project through the fragrance. He didn't think too much about it, but he wanted to appear worthy of his royal status. Furthermore, the Imperial Founding Day Ball was fast approaching, where all the prominent figures would gather. The prince declared that he wanted to show everyone that he had been reborn, and the young lady told him he could trust her. After all, she would create the most suitable perfume for His Highness. Cedric speculated that they would start their operation on the Imperial Founding Day. He said that Irene could handle it alone, but there was no absolute guarantee. The advisor was surprised to learn that Duke Evans wanted to provide Miss Winston with additional security. Cedric declared that he would be by her side as a knight, or rather, a bodyguard. But Rick reminded His Highness that every hour of his time on Imperial Founding Day was scheduled down to the minute. He couldn't understand how the Duke could drop everything to follow Miss Winston. But the Duke replied that there were priorities. For 3 days and nights, the palace gates were open. Even the streets were filled with the clamor of luxurious celebrations. In other words, it was the grandest day of the year. Ariel would never miss such an occasion. The girl's attire was as magnificent and luxurious as always. At this grand celebration, Miss Charlotte met the perfumer. She congratulated the girl on being crowned the May Queen, perhaps because she had used that perfume during the spring festival. Charlotte mentioned that no perfume in the Empire could compare to the one made with irises. Suddenly, 2 handsome men approached the young lady. They introduced themselves, one named Sean and the other, Zev. Ariel hadn't intended to make friends with noble sons, but the perfume seemed to be more attractive to women than men. Charlotte expressed her pleasure at meeting them both and hoped to see them again. Sean, smiling, offered to accompany the young lady during today's festivities. Miss Winston politely declined, saying she wanted to spend some time alone with Charlotte. The young men immediately surrounded them, accusing the 2 men of disturbing the young lady with their pushy invitation. They told them that Miss Ariel didn't want to be with them, and told them to leave. Suddenly, a lovely lady came over and asked the name of the perfume she was wearing today. She couldn't believe that Ariel had made it herself. The girl had been waiting for Ariel's shop to reopen. Ariel told her that the renovations were almost complete and that she would be able to visit her salon soon. But in the blink of an eye, Miss Winston's father appeared at the party. The ball gathered all the nobles, so naturally, she might run into her father. He began to scold her for being too absorbed in her business, but the perfumer asked to speak elsewhere. Stepping aside, her father declared that her prolonged adolescence should end, and it was time to fulfill her duties as the heiress of the Winston family. To this, Ariel apologized and informed him that she had no intention of getting married. The man guessed that she was still hung up on Duke Evans, which was why she was so against marriage. He claimed that if she continued to wait, the Duke wouldn't even notice her. Her father argued that the Duke only kept her around to ward off annoying marriage proposals. But suddenly, Duke Evans himself was standing behind them. Having heard the entire conversation, Ariel realized that if she and the Duke were seen together at the ball again, everyone would start whispering. She told her father not to worry about her marriage, as she would take responsibility and inherit the Earl's title regardless. Perhaps in his eyes, she was just a young and naive daughter, but ultimately, she was the sole heir of the Winston family. The girl returned to Duke Evans' side, asking him what he needed. Cedric first asked for permission to invite the young lady for a dance. Everyone started gossiping, wondering if Winston and Evans were an item again. His Highness hadn't paid much attention to Ariel in the past, but feelings could change at any time. Lately, whenever they had free time, the two were always together. Incidentally, they were a really good match. The man told the young lady to call him if she needed a dance partner. The girl thanked him for the offer, but he couldn't come to every ball just to be her dance partner. But this was merely a courtesy as a gentleman. Members of the royal family also came to the ball, and the Empress herself noticed that Ariel had come with Cedric as her partner again. But the Empress frankly stated that she and Duke Evans had only met by chance recently. She also said that, honestly, she wanted to ask Miss Winston for some advice. The Empress said that the season was about to change, and it was time to prepare new flowers for the royal family's garden. For Ariel, it was a great honor to be consulted about flowers by the Empress herself. The perfumer explained that irises are not difficult to grow, and their color harmonizes well with the national color of the Beller Empire. To be honest, until recently, the Empress hadn't been interested in that flower, but the princess had recently taken a liking to it. The Empress shared that she often heard the princess complain, saying she couldn't believe she would lose to a foreign flower. She thanked Miss Winston for her advice and told her to await the next invitation. Winston decided to seize the opportunity and focus on promoting her perfume. The gentleman, drinking expensive wine, suddenly bumped into a blue-haired girl, spilling the drink all over the floor. The girl apologized, saying she wasn't used to such crowded events. The man asked if she was hurt and said he would just get another drink. Lena bowed and introduced herself to the Duke, saying she had arrived in the Beller Empire only a few months prior. She also revealed that she might officially appear at the palace soon. Duke Evans was puzzled, as he hadn't received any notification of a foreign guest's arrival. He smelled a very familiar and warm scent from the girl. Ariel thought that although running a business was difficult, the rewards were worth it. She even received a business card from a foreign noble. Recently, the whole empire was talking about Ariel. A man approached her and asked if she was the creator of those miraculous perfumes. The perfumer realized that attending the ball for the empire's founding anniversary was the right decision, and perhaps she could expand her business overseas in the future. A red-haired man, drawn by the scent of irises, approached. Ariel was about to promote her increasingly famous product, but the stranger hit the nail on the head, pointing out that she had mixed iris and geranium. Ariel was surprised by the stranger's knowledge. He pointed out that the rich scent of geranium neutralized the lancewood. He said it was a brilliant idea because lancewood was a very magical herb, and just a little bit was enough to completely mask the scent of many other herbs. The man also said that he himself quite liked the scent of that herb. He also mentioned that upon contact, it would erase all other scents. Furthermore, the stranger explained that this herb had a special use, making it the perfect ingredient for a sleeping potion. The perfumer suddenly realized that this man was somehow connected to Ariel's origins. She didn't understand why he was mentioning sleeping potions to her. Ariel knew that sleeping potions were a clear death signal, so it was best to show no reaction. Seeing Ariel's frightened face, the man lightly said it was just a joke to break the ice. The stranger said he preferred the fragrance of beautiful flowers to sleeping potions. He asked if she had ever been to the port city of Shira, an exceptionally beautiful place where the last spring flowers were in bloom and the scenery must be spectacular. The red-haired man said he could take her there to admire the scenery. Ariel realized he was getting too close and felt she had to refuse. The stranger insisted that it would be lovely to discuss scents in such a beautiful place. The fifth prince walked over and ordered the man to let go of the lady's hand. The prince sharply questioned what he thought he was doing in the sacred Imperial palace. From the red hair, the prince immediately concluded that the stranger was from abroad. The man claimed to be from Sindola. The blonde prince replied that it was strange, as the locals he had met all had distinct accents. The other man replied that there were always exceptions. The foreign stranger knelt on one knee, kissed Miss Winston's hand, and declared that he would look forward to their next meeting. Cain asked Ariel if this sort of thing happened often, and she replied that it did from time to time. The girl smiled, realizing the prince had come out specifically to help her. The perfumer smiled and said she didn't expect His Highness to make such a wonderful and dashing move. The prince also said that his image transformation had been very successful, and he had been using the perfume every day since receiving it from Ariel. He excitedly announced that people were looking at him differently now. The blonde prince shared that he was starting to feel people's affection, receiving compliments and warm smiles. His mother had even praised him for his handling of the Magnus case. Cain happily declared that thanks to Ariel Winston, he was finally useful. The man smiled gently and extended his hand to the lady. He politely invited her to dance, and she agreed, taking her place beside him for a waltz. The prince noticed that as they danced, their scents mingled. He commented that he was intrigued by the new fragrance they created. He sniffed the air, remarking that Ariel smelled very sweet. The prince curiously asked Ariel what she thought of him. He wondered if he seemed different to her now. The man exuded an utterly captivating scent. Lost in thought, Ariel didn't even notice as she bumped into the girl behind her. She fell, covering her face with her hands and starting to cry softly. But suddenly, the girl realized she had fallen right on top of the Empire's fifth prince. He asked the lady if she was hurt, and everyone around them began to stare. Cedric, noticing the scene, realized the prince's affections were more than just rumors. He was planning to marry her. Cedric suddenly requested to cancel tomorrow's meeting, perhaps because the city was overflowing with people for the founding day festivities. Eileen asked the girl if she was planning to attend the ball tonight, and Ariel replied that she had more important things to do than go to a ball. In the middle of the street stood a large crystal elephant, looking almost lifelike. Eileen claimed that if you removed its scales, you could sell them for a good price. The man hastened to explain that it shed its scales periodically, and people simply picked them up. The price varied greatly depending on the condition of the scales, but they were still expensive. The lady bumped into Cedric at the festival, and he looked at her with concern. The Duke immediately asked Ariel why she wasn't at the ball, but wandering around the city instead. When asked what brought Cedric all the way from the Imperial Palace, he said he wanted to have some fun. Ariel spotted a tent, or rather, a street gambling game that could only be seen on Founding Day. The girl suggested that Cedric try the rainbow roulette with her. He temporarily took the food from the lady's hands, inspecting its quality and safety. After confirming it was naturally colored, he returned the roulette to Ariel. Evans surmised that the lady was taking a break today, remarking that sometimes a person just needs a day to enjoy leisurely fun. The perfumer agreed, but mentioned that she wasn't here for fun. The girl was here for the public auction that was about to begin. Ariel decided to keep the purpose of her visit a secret, but due to the excessive questioning, the lady gave the Duke a hint: sperm whale. He tried to guess what the perfumer wanted to buy. It seemed the auction was about to start, and you could immediately tell the prices of the goods were unbelievably high. The man suggested a game of guessing the final prices of the items. Whoever guessed correctly more times would win. But the lady stated that in that case, there needed to be a wager. Evans suggested that the loser should fulfill one wish of the winner. Ariel agreed, with the exception of anything too expensive or time-consuming. The man asked her what she considered too complex and time-consuming. Ariel said it was enough for both parties to come to a mutual agreement. The girl felt uneasy, but she still didn't think Cedric would ask for anything outrageous. The auction began, with bids of 200,000 bis and even a full million. A bronze statue, despite its small size, sold for 1 million bis. It was strange, but Evans kept winning, while Ariel's guesses were always slightly off. Finally, it was the sperm whale's turn, and the girl was quite excited. The thing was, there weren't any restrictions on participating in the auction. The bidding began with the sperm whale's blubber, with bids of 800, 1 million, and even 1,200,000. A man asked the lady what she was waiting for, and she replied that it was too early to bid. But suddenly, at the end of the auction, all the byproducts were put up for sale, starting at 5,000 bis. After thinking that the byproducts included sinews, fat, and lean, the girl was the first to bid. She happily left the auction, with Eileen already carrying out boxes of goods. The knight realized these items were far more valuable than they appeared. The world of the original work was similar to the one Ariel lived in, and most of the ingredients the perfumer needed could be substituted. But there was one thing that couldn't be replaced: ambergris from the sperm whale. This material was incredibly precious, known as the treasure of the sea. Adding it to perfume made the scent last longer and gave it a deep, rich aroma. And Ariel had managed to get her hands on it for a ridiculously low price. Stepping outside, the girl looked up at the sky and saw beautiful fireworks. As the crowd grew denser, the Duke suggested they move to a different location. Cedric suddenly pushed the girl against a wall, saying he was worried the crowd might sweep her away. Ariel asked the Duke if he was all right, as his behavior was truly strange. But the man didn't seem to hear her, simply saying that this wouldn't do, and they'd be better off on the roof. Cedric apologized in advance, then swiftly swept the perfumer into his arms. With a few quick movements, he carried her away from the bustling crowd and onto a rooftop overlooking the entire street. Cedric suddenly told Ariel he had recently won an argument. The girl laughed and said that since he'd won, he should make a wish. The lady had assumed Cedric would ask for 10 free bottles of healing perfume, but instead, with a playful smirk, he wished for a brief hug from the perfumer. He stated it would only take a second and he would immediately release her. Ariel quickly reminded him that they had broken up a long time ago. Moreover, she said if anyone saw them, they would quickly be thrust into the spotlight. The girl decided to prove him wrong and agreed to the embrace. The Duke pulled her close. He held her tightly, the scent of pine clinging to him, and she couldn't understand why 1 second felt like an eternity. Cedric thanked the lady for fulfilling his unusual request. It seemed Winston was exhausted, as she had overslept. Lena reminded her that today was the day of the interviews and mentioned that Ariel had been calling out the Duke's name in her sleep. Although nothing serious had happened, Ariel kept replaying yesterday's events in her mind. As expected, Cain had used the celebration as an opportunity to send assassins after Ariel. Cain decided that from now on, for the lady's safety, he would stay by her side at all times. A man named Ravi arrived for his interview. The girl asked him to tell her about himself. He shared his love for perfumes, explaining how he graduated from the Academy's chemistry department, second in his class. His main goal was to become like Ariel Winston herself, the outstanding perfumer of the century. He proceeded to explain how awestruck he was when he first smelled her perfumes, having never encountered such a fresh and deep rose fragrance anywhere else. He said her perfumes were like a textbook to him. The girl announced that they had both passed the selection process, but Cedric was shocked that Ariel had decided to hire inexperienced rookies. However, the lady retorted that work experience wasn't a mandatory requirement. She also declared that both candidates possessed the necessary skills. She pointed out that of all the applicants, they had shown the greatest passion for perfume. Lena and Irene were truly delighted to have new colleagues. The new perfume shop needed some essentials. First, excellent employees and a spacious area. Second, knowledge about a perfume called Ariel Winston. Third, a new perfume that would tie the previous points together. Ariel mentioned that in order to develop this new product, she would lock herself in the laboratory for a while. Half a month later, the Ariel perfume shop grandly opened. The lady announced to everyone that her new shop was open for business once again. Everyone was curious to see what changes awaited them. The new employees were very nervous, as this was their first job. The girl instructed Lena and Irene to mentor the youngsters. But right at the opening, an investor appeared and handed the lady a gift, which was surprising because Ariel had never dealt with him before. Inside the box was Ariel's crystal. The girl thanked the man for the gift, while the new employees began speculating about her relationship with Duke Evans. The fifth prince ordered a barrier to be erected around the shop. When asked about the need for the barrier, the official said it was for protection. Ariel thanked the blonde man for his concern, as he was truly thoughtful. When the shop finally opened its doors, they began welcoming customers. Thanks to the new staff, the service was pleasant and courteous. The perfumer concluded that the extra staff made things much easier. But suddenly, a lady asked Ariel what perfume she was wearing. Ariel announced that it was a new product launching today and offered to let her try it. The perfume exuded a luxurious and sweet fragrance, intertwined with vanilla, creating a subtle sweetness. With jasmine as its base note, filled with exhilarating beauty, people would be able to enjoy this fragrance for a long time. The girl said the scent was very deep and mysterious. Then Winston decided to share that it contained a special ingredient, ambergris, which enhanced the base notes. The customer marveled at how the scent lingered on the skin from morning till night. Raina reported that half of the charming aesthetic stock had already sold out. This was amazing, as the most popular perfume hadn't even been advertised. To this, Ariel said that Aisha was wrong, because the perfume was being advertised at this very moment. The entire advertisement was the girl wearing it before greeting the guests. Thanks to her popularity as the May Queen, the lady believed additional advertising was unnecessary. This was all because Ariel Winston had become an object of desire herself, and the girl couldn't even imagine the stock running out so quickly. Despite the unusual busyness, they had achieved great success, and Ariel suggested they celebrate together. Duke Evans walked into the shop, requesting to join their celebration. Cedric, somehow aware of the itinerary again, appeared right on time as they were closing. He explained that after smelling the perfume of the day, he guessed it was a new product. Cedric mentioned that the perfume was both beautiful and alluring. The knight and the maid excused themselves to fetch more food, leaving the couple alone. The girl noticed his gaze, unable to leave her. Cedric subtly pointed out that Ariel had been avoiding his eyes. Evans said his gaze was focused on only one person, but when Ariel realized that Cedric liked her, she was, so to speak, shocked. After that night, the girl couldn't fall asleep, unable to believe that Cedric could have feelings for Ariel. With her thoughts in complete disarray, she decided to go out for some air. She realized that even if Evans liked Miss Winston, as long as he was tied to Lena, he would stick to the original plan. But if things started to deviate from the original plot, his fate could become intertwined with Ariel's. At one point, right under her window, the lady found the main character doing something in the middle of the night. Lena apologized, saying she hadn't even realized the workday was over. Since the lady still couldn't sleep, she offered the girl some tea. The lady, feeling incredibly embarrassed, explained that the reason for her late visit was because in her hometown, people worked late into the night. The visitor mentioned that she had something to ask Miss Ariel. Ariel thought to herself how good the girl looked, unaware that Ariel had initially planned to kill her with poison perfume. The perfumer accepted custom orders, and Ariel asked Lena if she wanted to place one. The girl declared that the scent didn't matter, but she really wanted a magic perfume. Upon hearing this, Winston apologized, saying that she didn't accept orders for magic perfumes. Not only was the risk of failure high, requiring a large deposit, but if something went wrong, Ariel would have to bear full responsibility. But the blonde requested that she hear her out before making a decision. She explained that she was from Sendo, only briefly staying in the Beller Empire. The reason she came here was to cure an old illness of unknown origin. She couldn't find a cure in other countries, so she had no choice but to come here. Lena received the same response. Then she heard about Ariel Winston, saying she was a once-in-a-century genius perfumer who might be able to cure her illness. The perfumer stated that she wasn't a magician, just someone who made perfumes. The lady said she didn't mind failure, but Ariel might be able to help. The girl didn't remember Lena having such a mindset in the original story. She was the main character, and if there was a chance to help someone, she would definitely do it. The perfumer said that completely curing the illness might be impossible, but she could try to alleviate the symptoms. The lady said she would send the deposit tomorrow, but for now, she would take her leave. Ariel began to think that maybe she was overthinking things, as the original story might not be able to change. The girl approached the dungeon, promising that she would definitely save Theo from there. The lady came to the only place in the Empire where holy water flowed. Eileen explained that people came here to heal and purify themselves, and the priests used this holy water for blessings. Ariel wanted to use the holy water, perhaps to create a perfume that could ease Lena's suffering. But for the holy water to work, they needed a blessing, which could be obtained by simply walking up the mountain path. At the top of the mountain, priests stood to bless people. The goddess of fate, Selene, granted Ariel peace and tranquility. The priest claimed that the goddess would illuminate her path and bestow eternal blessings. But suddenly, the girl saw the fifth prince standing in the priest's place, asking her what she was doing here. He explained that they were short-staffed and he was here to help, as even by royal standards, he possessed divine power. Winston said she was here because she had received a commission and was planning to make a perfume. A perfume with healing effects. Unfortunately, taking the holy water away from this place was forbidden, but perhaps the girl could use some herbs as a workaround. Azure grass was a plant imbued with divine power. If you steeped it in water while reciting prayers, the water would become holy water. However, this herb was also unobtainable. The man offered Ariel some holy water, suggesting she develop the perfume directly at the temple. The lady thanked His Highness, as she had brought all the materials just in case. The speed and ease with which the girl made perfume was astonishing, but she had spent a considerable amount of time researching it. Suddenly, Ariel saw Sasha and Irene. It turned out Sasha wasn't feeling well and wanted a priest blessing. The perfumer said she felt fine and was there to make perfume. She based it on the pure scent of lily of the valley and added holy water for a blessing effect. The girl handed the bottle to Sasha and sprayed the freshly made product. Sasha's fever immediately subsided and her breathing became easier. Winston was very pleased with the positive effects. The fifth prince was also shocked, as he had never seen a simple perfume have such an effect before. Although it was only perfume, and the effect would only last 3 to 4 hours, it would still be very useful. A man, having this thought, suggested making more of that perfume and distributing it to those in need. This could reduce the priest's workload and perhaps even help those who couldn't easily get to a church. Ariel promised to make as much of the healing perfume as possible. She mentioned that she mixed the holy water with magical herbs that had pain-relieving effects. The recipe also included lily of the valley flowers for a subtle fragrance. When the protagonist sprayed the elixir on herself, she found that her breathing became much easier. She explained that the perfume wouldn't completely cure the lady's illness, but would significantly alleviate the pain. Lena, holding Ariel's hand, said she would definitely promote her perfume when she returned to her own country. The girl looked away, thinking that this might save her brother. She went to the cage and woke her brother. He asked her where she had been, and she replied that she had taken care of some things. Lena handed the perfume to the man, saying it would ease his pain. She claimed this pain reliever was made by the Empire's most distinguished perfumer. She told him to use it every 4 hours, as she had secretly poured some of the perfume from the bottle and told him to hide it well. Suddenly, a girl appeared and asked what they were doing. Researcher Kana reported that she had entered without the leader's knowledge, and the girl might tell on them. She took the perfume from them and asked if it worked. The girl declared that with this, conducting experiments would be much easier. The leader ordered Fyra to report any strange reactions if she noticed any. There was a formal dinner with the kingdom tonight, and the person concluded it was time to return to the palace before it got too late. They reminded Lena to make sure to get on good terms with the right people. His love was so deep that at the last ball for the founding of the Empire, he dealt with all the mercenaries, but luckily, Evans killed them before the boss extracted any information. They found it amusing to watch the Duke cross all boundaries of decency, and the informant demanded that he be dealt with. Lena let him know he could trust her. Evans thought to himself that it was a good day, but unfortunately, the weather wasn't cooperating. Cain heard they had distinguished guests from the Sendo Kingdom. The men discussed seeing a man and a woman coming from there. Evans mentioned that he thought the perfume Lena was wearing was the same as Miss Ariel's. The fifth prince said that he used to hate Cedric for being perfect at everything, but now he was actually grateful to him. At the royal dinner, the Duke and the protagonist met again, and Lena said it was fate that brought them together again. Cedric mentioned that her perfume smelled familiar, which is why he remembered her. Surprisingly, the protagonist didn't use perfume, but the Duke still smelled a familiar scent. She told him she had met Ariel Winston at the spring festival celebration. The Duke said he was her investor, impressed from the business plan stage. He believed that with her extraordinary talent, the shop was destined for success, but the results exceeded all expectations. Lena started to worry that she and Ariel had crossed paths again, because if she proceeded with her plan, it might actually provoke his resentment. The girl hurriedly greeted Prince Cain and Princess Cain at the ball. Cain immediately realized that the girl might be wearing a similar perfume to Ariel's. The lady mentioned that she was very eager to meet them both and also mentioned that the prince had once run his own business. She also shared that she couldn't wait for Ariel's perfume to reach her kingdom. The man showed off the perfume that the lady had specially blended for him. Cain suggested the girl should try it, and she replied that it would be a great honor for her. Lena began to realize that Winston was so famous that she could even influence royalty, and it would be reckless to oppose her. To revive the Cain Guild, Ariel's genius abilities were essential. However, if such a public figure, known even to royalty, disappeared, it would cause quite a stir. Lena decided it was time to come up with a new plan. Suddenly, Duke Evans appeared behind her and asked what she was doing there. But the man suddenly asked if the lady had seen a certain mark 16 years ago. He began voicing his suspicions, believing the girl had witnessed some mysterious magic or experiment. She realized he suspected her of being a spy for Cain, but couldn't understand why. She tried to avoid his gaze, saying it was unpleasant to hear such things, and that she had never heard or seen anything like it. Then, the man apologized and explained that he was simply conducting an investigation. He also asked her to tell him if she saw or learned anything. Evans still remembered the smell of the place where he was imprisoned 16 years ago. Cedric was certain that the girl carried the scent of that place. The Duke looked through all of Lady Lena's documents, but everything was in order. The advisor also confirmed the girl's identity was legitimate. The only unusual thing was the disappearance of her younger brother during her childhood. Cedric heard that she disappeared with her brother when she was 8, but returned alone a few weeks later. It's well known that Cain kidnaps children for human experimentation. Assuming Lena's brother was one of Cain's test subjects, Lena, who escaped alone after being kidnapped, might have joined Cain. To save her brother from all this, there was one thing Cedric couldn't understand. Why would she risk her life to infiltrate the Imperial palace? She might be the main accomplice, so the Duke requested a thorough investigation. If this investigation could uncover some key clues, Cedric might be able to figure out why Cain was so obsessed with Lady Winston. He might be able to find a way to deal with this madness. Reyna reported that Ariel received an invitation from Princess Lena of the Imperial Palace. It was wonderful, as the princess was inviting a perfumer to her birthday ball. Ariel nervously thought about what gift to give her, something luxurious yet not cliché. The maid gave her an idea, saying the princess loved to travel. Euphoria Island, Tanzari, you name it, there wasn't a place she hadn't been. It was said she especially frequented the snowy lands of the north. The reason the princess frequented the snowy lands was because she wanted to verify if the legends were true. Winston decided to go there next week to create a perfume for the princess. It was a good idea. A week later, the three of them went to that snowy place. The girl admired the snowy landscape after a long time. Reyna asked Ariel if she had been there before, since the place they lived didn't have winter. But suddenly, the girl found the Duke there. She was surprised. It turned out the Duke was there to investigate. The girl explained that she had received an invitation to the princess's ball, so she decided to give her a perfume inspired by her favorite place. The Duke mentioned that she liked to come there because of the fairy tale, but it was just a natural phenomenon. He said it would get colder in the evening, and Ariel had better go back before dark. Ariel was meticulously concocting a new perfume formula, drawing on her experience and exceptional talent in chemistry. Ern and Reyna returned with bags full of groceries. Ern told the girls to take a break as he would make dinner. He cooked a very delicious meal, much to the ladies' amazement. Although the girls didn't come here to relax, thanks to the beautiful scenery, it turned into a vacation. Ariel shared that when she first transmigrated, all she did was work. She was shocked by the fact that she had transmigrated into Ariel's body, but for her, being able to work with perfume again was a blessing, all thanks to this Ariel. After all, everything she desperately dreamed of in her past life had come true here. She realized that, in the end, everything could be said to have turned out for the best. Winston wondered who Evans had come to see. Reyna said they would pack up and go back to the cabin, and the perfumer would sit for a while longer and then come over. Ariel struggled to fight off sleepiness, but she knew that if she fell asleep right there on the street, Reyna would definitely nag her. The girl eventually fell asleep and had a nightmare where the original Ariel poisoned the protagonist. When Ariel woke up, a worried Duke was already sitting beside her. He told her it was dangerous to sleep in such a place, and she'd better go inside. The girl said she dreamed that Evans left her, to which the man declared he would never leave. Ariel noticed Cedric's mood had worsened. The man mentioned that he didn't even want such a thing to happen in a dream. Cedric gave his coat to the girl, saying it was getting colder outside. Ariel realized that the moment she felt warm, she woke up. She asked the Duke if he really had been sitting next to her the whole time she was asleep. The Duke said he simply couldn't let a lady catch a cold. Evans noticed the girl sleeping alone and thought it was dangerous, so he sat next to her. He was afraid Ariel would be cold, so he gently embraced her. At this, Winston claimed she was still a little cold. Unable to think of a better solution, the Duke embraced the perfumer tightly, warming her with his body heat. The girl knew well that she shouldn't invest too much emotion in this man. Her thoughts clouded by emotion. She couldn't push him away when he pulled her into a kiss. The lady apologized for her complete lack of resistance. The aurora borealis appeared in the sky. It seems Aurora has decided to show herself, the man said. The perfumer smelled a pleasant fragrance. Cedric said it was the scent of a unique flower. The flowers began to glow as if lit from within. "This is incredible," the girl said. It was a wondrous scent, like a blend of lily, jasmine, and iris. "They only bloom at dawn when the aurora borealis appears," the Duke explained. "This is what they call Aurora's fairies." Memories of becoming the May Queen and opening her new shop flooded back. This flower awakened happy moments. All it took was a whiff of its fragrance. The princess had said she wanted to relive her childhood memories. Now, Ariel had decided what gift to give. The man asked if Lena had pleased the Duke, but she reported that not only had she failed to get close, but she had aroused more suspicion. The girl recounted how she had tried to engage him in conversation for a long time, but he simply turned away and ignored her. She apologized for not carrying out the plan properly. He only grew angry, pinching her chin. "I thought the Duke would be infatuated with a pretty face," he said. He concluded that if that was the case, Lena was useless, but she mentioned the Duke would be attending the princess's birthday banquet, and she would try again then. But the man vetoed that plan, saying Phil would give her instructions in the morning. The day of the ball, celebrating the princess's birthday, arrived. Ariel was informed that the Duke had arrived. A man complimented her, saying she looked especially gorgeous today. "Although it's a small thing, it's best to consider it a thank you gift," he said. "After all, I've escorted you several times now." Cedric asked if the girl had picked the gift herself. After she answered, he smiled, saying the color was very beautiful. Winston felt awkward when the Duke took her hand, especially after the kiss. The lady began to think yesterday's events were just a mistake. At the ball, the princess greeted them personally and noted they were together again. The girl offered her congratulations, saying her birth was a great fortune for the Empire. Her Highness was pleased they could come and wished them a pleasant time. The Duke decided to stand out, presenting the princess with gold bars as a gift. The girl promised she would use it wisely. Ariel felt it was time to reveal what the real birthday present was. Everyone then understood why the lady had been absent for several days. She was creating a new perfume. The fifth prince saw Lena again at the palace. The man decided it was best to keep an eye on her, just in case. Ariel couldn't take her eyes off the man, even though she tried to compose herself. Suddenly, a doctor entered the room and immediately apologized for his untimely arrival. The Duke directed him to examine not himself, but the lady's ankle. The doctor found nothing serious, as Ariel had earlier tried to attest. The perfumer immediately realized she had just wanted to kiss the man. Evans said it was truly a good thing the injury was minor. He then invited the lady to another dance. The girl thought to herself, that look in his eyes was practically foul play. But suddenly, Ariel remembered Cedric had mentioned wanting to talk to her. The man explained that he felt inner peace when the perfumer was near, initially thinking it was just his madness subsiding. But now he was certain he liked Ariel Winston. But before he could say it aloud, the lady hurriedly left the hall. The girl didn't understand why she hadn't realized it before, as every moment had practically screamed the truth. Cedric embraced her, telling her not to run away, but she claimed she wanted to be true to herself, and that was impossible by his side. Ariel wanted to explain everything, but suddenly, her lips were sealed with a kiss. "Don't worry," Cedric told her, "because to me, Ariel, you're the main character." The girl wondered if she could change the course of the original story. The biggest question was whether the Duke would fall in love with her, the real her, not just a character in the plot. The perfumer decided she wouldn't know the answer unless she took the first step herself. Everything would be alright, because the story had already begun to change. Now she wasn't just the secondary character Ariel Winston, but the girl from the real world. But suddenly, the lady vanished, and the entire room filled with a strange smoke. Cedric immediately recognized Cain's handiwork in the attack, and yelled that they had to get out because something was terribly wrong. The Duke rushed outside and saw the prince running towards him. He asked what had happened. The prince explained that someone had planted paralyzing smoke devices throughout the Imperial palace. The devices were set to activate and spread the smoke at a specific time. The guard were trying to control the situation with a neutralizing agent. The suspect turned out to be Lena, who had been wandering around the palace feigning sweetness and innocence. Given her presence at the official event between the two countries, it was determined to be a premeditated crime. They began interrogating the girl, asking who sent her, but she kept saying she didn't know anything. Cedric said he had been investigating and that Cain might be holding the Vimbel family hostage, which was why she was obeying his orders. Ever since Lena returned alone after she and her younger brother were kidnapped, his whereabouts had been unknown. Recently, the Duke even showed her Kana's mark, and judging by her expression, she recognized it. The girl looked away and asked if they could save her brother if she told them everything she knew. Evans said there was a chance, but he couldn't make any guarantees. Nevertheless, they had to try their best, because the girl would tell them everything. They wanted to leverage Kana's influence over the powerful magical beasts they had created. To control these beasts, a special chemical substance was required. The Duke pointed out that complete control was impossible with their current technology. They planned to use Ariel's abilities to completely subdue the beasts. 5 hours had passed since Winston disappeared. The lady was paralyzed, lying on a stone table, when a man saw her awaken. He approached. The lady immediately recognized him, as he had offered to escort her at a recent ball. He introduced himself as the guild's second-in-command, Rod. Upon seeing him, the lady immediately understood that he was a gang leader. He claimed that he hadn't kidnapped her, but only wanted to fulfill one of her wishes. Rod mentioned that it was a long time ago, something she might not even remember. Rod declared that he would help the lady regain her memories. The Empress said they had taken root in the system again. After the paralyzing gas incident and the lady's disappearance, there was a chance to track them down. An emergency meeting was held at the Imperial Palace. The Duke announced that he would immediately lead the troops and raze Cain's base to the ground. The Royal Guard, joining forces with Evans' Knights, infiltrated the base. The inside of the base was crawling with magical beasts, an endless swarm commanded by the fifth prince himself. Deep within the base, there was a vast garden where Anoxia was cultivated. Suddenly, the enormous crystal that powered the flowers began to make strange noises and spark. They messed up again, but the chances of successfully creating that creature were high this time. Credit should be given where it's due. The second branch chose the Duke's family, believing they would succeed. Ariel began to recall a time when she and Evans were locked in a cage together as children. The boy was badly injured, and the girl offered to treat his wounds. After all, she had her mother's magical potion that could cure anything. Sure enough, the girl successfully healed the young Cedric. Her mother was the Empire's most brilliant alchemical scientist, capable of creating anything. But unfortunately, Ariel hadn't seen her mother since she arrived here. When the carriage had an accident, she opened her eyes to find herself here. He, too, was dragged here after the carriage was attacked. Evans declared that now they were both in the hands of their kidnappers. The girl suggested they should escape from this place together as soon as possible. They were conducting experiments on the boy. The recorded observations showed the highest magical compatibility. Test subject number 6 died of magic poisoning. The red-haired boy asked his father to try the test. After enduring all the pain, the girl still used her mother's elixir to ease the suffering of others. The children thought Cain was a pervert for torturing children for a whole week. The girl said that no matter what, it would be nice to escape from this place with her mother, the three of them together. The red-haired boy said it was just a joke, then claimed to be the future second male lead. The boy told her he knew where her mother was and told her to follow him. These memories stung Cedric like a thin thread. The crystal seemed about to explode from the magical energy. Cedric tried to protect the girl who was helping him. He grabbed a crystal shard and shielded the red-haired man. The Duke told the prince that he remembered everything, including who kidnapped Ariel. The girl suddenly remembered everything, even the moment she found her dead mother. From that day on, they forced her to create perfumes for their experiments. The wicked boy kept fanning the flames, saying she would never leave this place. He also laughed triumphantly, declaring that she belonged to him. Ariel remembered that they wanted to use her to replace her mother. They also tried to get rid of Cedric, so she would be under his control. But in the end, an accident forced them to halt an important experiment, and it was Rode who led Cain to ruin. The man wondered what the future held if they joined forces. The second-in-command went mad, suggesting that Ariel stay by his side and change the world completely. The perfumer said with disgust that whatever crazy idea he came up with, it would never happen. In response, the red-haired man said he had no choice but to force her to comply. He planned to brainwash the lady with his next experiment. Ariel had worked too hard to get where she was. She couldn't let herself become cannon fodder. At this long-awaited moment, Evans finally arrived at the right place. Rode was surprised that the man was able to find her. Despite his sorry state, the Duke drew his sword and told Ariel to hold on a little longer, that he would save her. With a few slashes, Cedric shattered the crystal, dispelling the magic, saying that the Duke shouldn't have interfered. Rode threw a grenade that emitted a strange smoke. The smoke came from the demon world and could incite a deeper madness. The mastermind declared that no matter how hard Cedric tried, he was just a pathetic little beast in the end. The knights rushed into the room, asking if His Highness was all right. The Duke lost control, rushing into the fray and attacking his own knights. But the fifth prince intervened, protecting Lena with his divine power. His nephew urged Evans to come to his senses, emphasizing that this was crucial not only for him, but also for Miss Winston. Voices screamed in his head, urging him to betray others, to kill indiscriminately. He charged again, but after suppressing the prince's divine power, he turned his attention to the knights. Ariel stepped in front of him to protect Lena, preventing him from hurting her friend. The girl tried to bring Cedric back to his senses. Suddenly, after a long scream, Evans finally recognized Ariel. Ariel knew he wasn't completely mad yet, and just in case, she had a calming pill in her pocket. The man silently pulled the girl closer. It was a symbolic embrace. The monk began to heal Cain. The knight promised he would return with good news, and Ariel had to cope alone. The symptoms were getting worse, and it would be difficult to handle alone. The girl really didn't want to use this method, but there was no other choice. Ariel put a pill in her mouth and then pulled the man into a deep kiss. Everything went smoothly, as the strong sedative would soon make Evans feel better. Finally, the Duke came to his senses and began to speak. Holding the girl tightly, the man said he never wanted to go through that again. They bound all those involved, including Cain, with heavy chains. Rode claimed that even though Cedric was his father's successful creation, he was still a monster. Monster blood flowed through Evans' veins, and that couldn't be changed. To this, the man said he didn't regret his mixed bloodline one bit. Admittedly, there were some side effects, but he had gained obvious power. It was great because Cedric could slaughter anyone like rats. Ariel asked how to completely get rid of the side effects of human experimentation. Rode said the girl was naive, because no one in the world could purify a tainted soul. Once the body was intertwined with demonic blood, it could never return to its previous state. Winston's face showed the frustration of not getting the answer she wanted. Evans proudly declared that he didn't care anymore because he had found his sanctuary. Rode tried to persuade her again, saying she could live an ordinary life, mixing perfumes like a merchant. But now she could have things she couldn't have dreamed of before. The perfumer retorted, asking what made him think she would want to play this childish game of world conquest. He would rot in prison for his crimes. He started yelling, saying he had sacrificed a lot to see Ariel. In response, the girl handed him a bottle of perfume that could kill him. With a single press, they offered to send him home. There was only one rule for using it, only one person at a time. Led by His Excellency Duke Evans, the missing children returned home. They successfully dealt with the monsters. However, at the last moment, Cain, the guild leader, used some suspicious magic on the Duke. It caused him incredible pain, and they didn't even dare to approach. It was Miss Ariel Winston who saved the Duke. The Imperial Palace plans to contact the young lady to prepare for emergencies. After eliminating Cain and dealing with the aftermath, the guild leader and mastermind, Lord Rosario, was also punished. He was sentenced to life imprisonment as a slave. As long as he bears the brand, he will be monitored wherever he goes, and if he tries to leave the country, the branded area on his body will explode. Ariel's employees, after reading the story in the newspaper, commented that she led an interesting life. The girl was hailed as a heroine of love, bravely rescuing the Duke from madness. Winston gained immense popularity, with admirers constantly asking about the situation. Some even believe the girl protected Cedric with her own body, as the incident sparked a series of foolish rumors. But to the girl's relief, their sales increased. Ariel underwent a checkup with the court physician, rested for a while, and returned full of energy. Lena took excellent care of the shop while the owner was away. Now, even without the chief perfumer, all the employees could handle everything perfectly. They professionally advised customers on products, reminding them of the long-lasting fragrance on their skin. Seeing this, Winston concluded there wouldn't be any problems. Later, the lady had guests waiting for her upstairs, specifically Vienne. The girl and her brother apologized for such an unexpected visit, but they wanted to thank Ariel personally. But Lena also wanted to confess that she had been deceiving the girl, and the danger she faced was entirely her fault. The perfumer said the most important thing was that everything ended well, and that she understood, as the girl had important reasons. The Imperial Palace stated that they waived her punishment since she provided information that led to the elimination of the fraudulent guild and was also a victim of human experimentation. But what's done is done, so if Ariel ever needed her, she would come running without hesitation. When asked about her future plans, Lena said she wanted to become an apprentice at the Magic Tower. It was a great idea, as Lena initially dreamed of becoming a magician, traveling the continent, using magic to save people trapped in difficult situations like her. But Lena's brother dreamed of becoming a distinguished knight like Duke Evans. She wondered what the perfume was for, guessing it was due to the experiment side effects. However, it was Lord Rosario who ordered its creation to make the experiments more effective, because if a person forgets the pain, you can torture them as you please. Ariel decided to give the Anasia perfume to the siblings. She mentioned that during the experiments, Lena was also injected with monster blood, perhaps not as severely as Cedric, but she sometimes suffered from side effects, and the Anasia scent would help her during those times. As soon as they finished talking, Lena hurried home, and the girl stepped outside. She saw Evans. The man suggested the lady spend the night with him. The perfumer was surprised the place was so far away that they needed to use teleportation. The Duke mentioned he planned to go to Ozendrick and requested the girl accompany him. Ariel asked why they needed to go there. Evans suggested they go and see first, then learn everything afterward. Upon arrival, a kind old woman greeted them, noting what a long journey they had. The lady was the high priestess. She asked if the lady the man told her about was standing before her. The woman stepped closer, and the girl didn't understand why such an important figure as the high priestess would scrutinize her so closely. The old woman asked Cedric to give them a moment alone, as she had some private matters to discuss with the lady. As soon as the Duke left, the priestess revealed she knew Ariel was from another world. She said she didn't intend to interrogate the lady. The perfumer wondered how much the lady knew, whether she knew she was from Earth. The priestess claimed she understood what troubled the girl, having seen such a thing before. In her long life, she had only encountered this rare occurrence twice. The girl asked if there were others from her world. Everyone adapted well, though Ariel adapted much faster than those two. You could tell at a glance that Winston was from another world. She didn't have a holy mark, and her soul radiated a different energy. Ariel quickly realized the Duke had also guessed she was from another world, which is why he brought her here. The old woman claimed the Duke's fears were unnecessary. When Evans returned, the priestess told him Ariel was perfectly healthy. The girl wondered if the Duke also thought she had been experimented on. After all, Lord Rosario was quite obsessed with Ariel. And in the past, while with Cedric, the lady mentioned she had conducted chemical experiments. In place of her mother, the lady was right. Evans hadn't sensed any demonic energy. The Duke shared that when he went down into the sewers, he remembered everything that happened in the past, and Ariel was the only reason he was able to hold on. He wondered if there could be any other reason besides the test. The perfumer had a hunch about the reason, but didn't know how to explain it. All known treatments for this type of symptom involved ingredients from the demon realm. So far, Cedric's symptoms were described as incurable in the original story, but there was another way, although the girl wasn't sure sure if she should mention it. But the girl thought, if the author himself wrote this novel, it might not be entirely nonsense. After hesitating, she revealed the second reason for the alleviation of the symptoms: love. Cedric's madness was caused by the demonic blood not fully integrating with his own. To cure it, the nature of the demonic blood mixed with human blood needed to be eradicated. One way to treat it was to sweep it away with humanity. In other words, emotions that only humans could experience. The girl mentioned that it was just a possibility. She felt the author had read too many fairy tales, and it also sounded like Ariel liked him. Like him a lot. The man said that didn't mean the theory held any weight. It seemed strange to him, but if she shared the same origin as him, the symptoms should have subsided the first time they met. At first, he thought it was a memory effect, but from a certain point, things became inexplicable. The Duke had planned to confess in a more appropriate place, at a more appropriate time, but he couldn't hold back any longer because he had fallen in love with Ariel. Winston, the guy, wasn't sure if he had the right to say so, but he was head over heels for her. In response, the girl reciprocated his feelings and confessed her own. Suddenly, a strange thought crossed her mind. If she had really stepped into a fairy tale, the words "the end" should pop up below the scene at this moment. A month later, Ariel woke up in her own bed. Next to her was Cedric, asking if she slept well. The perfumer started staying at Cedric's manor more frequently under the guise of being his personal physician. During that month, they also became closer to Evans. At the same time, the girl began to expand her perfume business. She also opened a second perfume shop in the Magellan district. Charlotte congratulated the lady on the opening and overcoming the business challenges. Ariel suggested working late into the night to prevent the perfume from selling out. Lena also wanted to meet with the lady. Winston didn't know there was a restaurant in the department store. It was incredibly beautiful there, as Cedric had chosen the place. Not only did the place look beautiful, but it was also expensive. Ariel realized the more she looked at him, the more shy he became in front of the lady. It was a perfect dinner. Evans suddenly declared again that Ariel occupied all his thoughts, and he thought he had fallen in love with her. He knew he couldn't suppress this feeling any longer. The Duke said that every day with the girl brought him immense joy, so he got down on one knee and proposed to her. Ariel didn't hesitate much and said the magic words. She agreed. From now on, they would fall asleep and wake up together every day. That night, they spent it ordinarily, discussing where Ariel wanted to open her third shop. She was curious if her perfume would be popular abroad. Their conversation didn't quiet down until dawn. The man drew close without warning, as if he had always done so, and she, as if on command, closed her eyes, her lungs filling with his scent. At some point, she was suddenly filled with certainty. Even if Ariel breathed this scent for the rest of her life, she would never tire of it. The wedding day arrived, and looking at the mirror, the perfumer declared that her efforts were not in vain. Despite the influx of customers, she still needed at least 10 hours of sleep. And the biggest problem that day was that she couldn't meet Cedric. All because of that tradition that forbade the bride and groom from seeing each other a week before the wedding. Reina said it would be worth the wait. Just think, soon the lady would be Ariel Evans. Finally, the bride arrived at the Bella banquet hall of the Imperial Palace. The priest asked the bride and groom to look at each other and read their vows. The groom vowed that he would only ever love one woman, and that was the bride. The bride vowed that she would only ever love one man, and that was the groom. The priestess wanted them to put rings on each other, but they were already kissing. Ariel called out to Evans to put the ring on her. They said the ring was the chain that held the marriage together. Finally, the officiant pronounced Ariel and Evans' husband and wife. Jenna personally came to the wedding to congratulate the perfumer. Jenna reported that a band of robbers had been rampant near the West Gate recently, which could complicate visits. The Duke declared that he was planning to send a squad of knights and would exterminate them soon. Charlotte kept calling Ariel by Cedric's last name with a mischievous grin. The girls still couldn't believe it had actually happened, to which the blonde replied that it was because they hadn't had their first night yet. However, Ariel didn't mind just hanging out and chatting with Evans. The next evening, they traveled to euphoric Love Island. She was excited about the pink sand and later thrilled that Evans had become her husband. They didn't manage to walk for long as it was getting late and the weather was turning cold. Then, the Duke suggested returning to the villa. The Duchess felt like she had done nothing but eat that day. To this, Cedric simply suggested pouring more wine. Ariel wanted to ask what type of wine it was, but suddenly she knocked over her glass. The man said that the girl always worried about the most unexpected things. He smiled, wiping the spilled wine from her hand, and suggested they go upstairs. The perfumer knew it was late and that they were about to spend their wedding night together. Evans seemed very nervous when the Duke suggested they go to bed. The Duchess smiled and said she was fine, then went up to the second floor. Cedric laughed at the girl's shy behavior, although it wasn't the best time to laugh. Ariel pushed him onto the bed and kissed him deeply. When Cedric chose to take the dominant position, the girl realized he was also nervous. The next day, the couple decided to go to the beach. Ariel asked Cedric if he was aware of the mischievous expression on his face. It just so happened that there was a festival in the village that evening. The couple felt very relaxed and at ease since no one recognized them. Then, the Duke suggested the Duchess start her own business here, but she suddenly overheard a conversation and discovered there was a fortune teller nearby. Out of curiosity, Ariel decided to peek into the tent, and the Duchess saw a familiar fortune teller, the one who had told many truths before. She didn't expect to meet Ariel here, and it made the fortune teller curious, since Ariel was supposed to be on her honeymoon. The fortune teller declared it a great honor to see such a radiant couple in person. She had them draw 3 cards that would predict their fate. From the cards, the fortune teller clearly saw that the two were a match made in heaven. The cards foretold a bright future for them. There might be some minor troubles along the way, but they would dissipate quickly. In addition, they would be blessed with 2 angel babies. The fortune teller claimed Ariel would have twins. The girl was shocked by the fortune teller's words, as she had no idea she might be pregnant. But Cedric immediately started thinking about finding a skilled midwife and a mage. He said that if the fortune teller wasn't lying, it wouldn't be so bad. She asked the girl if she wanted to take another look. In the past, Ariel had drawn a card representing her destined partner. That card represented a grandfatherly figure, and out of curiosity, she inquired about his health. Ariel drew 3 more cards and found that the gentleman's health was not threatened. It didn't mean there were no problems, but she would find a solution and handle it. The man shared that the twins would bring joy to his widowed life, but he thought it would be very hard on the girl. But the girl mentioned that half of what was said earlier was just for fun. Finally, the couple returned home, and the first thing Lena did was rush into the Duchess's arms. Since she returned earlier than expected, the staff quickly decided to throw a welcome party. Lena asked the Duchess why she had returned earlier than planned. Ariel replied that she would start developing a new perfume from today. Everyone declared that they would help with whatever the Duchess needed. Ariel wanted to create a perfume with a sense of euphoria, the scent of the sea breeze with a hint of palm and exotic fruits, and a mix of musk and coniferous wood. As the girl continued creating her new perfume, she noticed that Cedric had been waiting for her for a while. He said that the girl was too focused, so he decided to just watch quietly, and Ariel only let him smell the new perfume. She decided to name the perfume Happiness, but it was actually a series, and this one, with the scent of the sea breeze, was the first. When asked how many she planned to create, she said she didn't know. It might go on forever. Ariel wondered what a perfume that could bring happiness would smell like. It was the fragrance of flowers dedicated to bees and butterflies. The girl had spent a lot of time thinking about this, but now she was sure she knew the answer. The blissful scent she so longed to uncover belonged to a person, a fragrance unmatched by any flower or expensive perfume, the scent of her beloved skin. For Cedric and her, they were the only ones who truly gave each other happiness.